Wolverine goes feral. Yeah, you heard that right. And why wouldn't he? Given everything he's been through, Wolverine remains a fan favorite, even though he lost his nose in what's now a long-forgotten story by Larry Hama, and cannily similar to Voldemort. Who knows? In this mega-long read, we'll explore the entire story of Wolverine going berserk and feral. And for a comprehensive overview of Feral Wolverine, we'll first take a look at the 1993 X-Men crossover event in Fatal Attractions, and then delve into issues 90 to 118 and 145 of Wolverine, 1988. So, let's dig our claws in. Acolytes attack. Fatal Attractions opens with a visual of a rugged, unkempt Charles Xavier contemplating. He's seated in his wheelchair, synced with Cerebro in his ready room. That's never a good sign. Located below his Westchester mansion, this room has a computer chamber that allows him access to information that's obtained both legally and illegally from across the globe. In comes Bishop, the energy-absorbing mutant from the future, who wants to discuss the matter of his resignation. He shamefully admits that he feels like a man out of time, an outsider in the midst of outsiders, his fellow X-Men, as his direct approach is considered unnecessarily disruptive. Professor X outright rejects Bishop's resignation and informs him that attending his school for gifted youngsters does not always require fighting for survival, but is also about learning. Charles informs him that he'd consider himself a failure if Bishop fails. After the professor outright rejects his resignation, a reassured Bishop thanks Professor X and is then instructed to ask Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, to ready the van. We're then transported to our Mother of the Sacred Church school, where we see Sharon Friedlander as a school nurse, who's acting on Xavier's instructions to protect a new mutant. She's then attacked by the Acolytes, who refer to her as a flat scan, the derogatory term for non-mutants. At Xavier's Institute, Jean Grey and Warren Worthington III, aka Archangel, are running a simulation to train Bishop and Gambit. Soon after, they're interrupted by a rather scary hologram of Professor X. It was the Professor's psionic projection, and called in to fight Magneto's chosen army, the Acolytes. Led by Fabian Cortez, the Acolytes are a fanatical group of religious zealots who decided to carry on what they thought was Magneto's legacy, a genetic cleansing, even after his death. They attacked the school bus carrying the children of our Mother of the Sacred Heart with the intention of abducting and recruiting a new anonymous mutant. After learning that the unidentified latent mutant is actually a child with Down syndrome, the Acolytes reject him. Fighting back. Angry at them for attacking children, the Gold X-Men team decide to take the fight to the Acolytes in France, where Wolverine insists on joining them. Their mission is to rescue mutant ally Dr. Moira McTaggart, who's been abducted by the Acolytes. As the battle rages on with bloodshed on both sides, Cortez brutally attacks Bishop and Wolverine retaliates by piercing Cortez's ribcage. He's nursed back to health by Amelia Voigt. Cortez then receives a surprise visit from the Games Master, who informs him that due to recent complications, all the points he gained to date to emerge as the Tsar of the Upstarts were part of a secret competition, every participant vying for an ultimate prize, would be taken away. Cortez claims he's rightfully earned those points as his actions directly led to Magneto's death. He shockingly realizes why he could have lost points for that. Meanwhile, Dr. McTaggart and Professor Xavier are investigating the deadly legacy virus that was released by the terrorist strife to wipe out the mutant population that's also infected Illyana Rasputin, Colossus's sister, otherwise known as Magic. Mutant or human? What's the difference? In one of the very few X titles where mutants are portrayed just like us humans who experience emotions like pain, loss, and grief, we see the mutants bear it all out. Jean checks in on a grieving Jubilee and urges her to get her feelings out. Illyana was visited by Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat. After Kitty's arrival, Jubilee felt useless and sought out the professor for words of encouragement. Seeing him distraught too, she wished to go comfort him, but instead chose to emphasize to Kitty how alone she'd be. Kitty asks her to stay for some time with Illyana, as the three girls enjoy their youth for the first time ever. Illyana suddenly had a seizure and was sedated by Dr. McTaggart. Realizing there's no hope for Illyana, Xavier just places a Shi'ar helmet on her head, admitting defeat. Jubilee notices that Illyana had dropped her Nightcrawler plushie when she went into respiratory arrest. Not knowing what else to do, she simply places the plushie back in Illyana's hands. The Gold team returns from their fight with the Acolytes and soon realizes what's happened. Colossus is rightfully angry at the fact that X-Men business continuously separates him from his family. His parents also died recently while he was on a mission with his fellow X-Men. In one sentence, the line between human and mutant is completely blurred when Jean says that even though we come into the world alone and leave alone, the time spent in the company of others, growing and learning together in between, is all that matters and what makes it all worth it in the end. Quicksilver's destiny. Meanwhile, in Virginia, the The Acolytes attack a hospice, brutally massacring patients and doctors alike. Nurse Leslie Murray recounts the horrific attack on the members of X-Factor. One of the Acolytes, Spore, has been captured by X-Factor. Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver, enters and as soon as Spore sees him, coughs up the Acolyte's next target, the US military base at Cape Hayden. In most depictions, Quicksilver is Magneto's son. He has the superpower to move very fast and is the twin brother of the Scarlet Witch, so he's the Acolyte's obvious choice as their new leader. Val and Quicksilver, along with Random, set out to Cape Hayden and are followed by X-Force. Turns out, it was the Acolyte's plan all along to lure Quicksilver there and enlist him to carry on Magneto's legacy. After he adamantly declines, the Acolytes leave. Exodus approaches X-Force, warning them about the impending arrival of a greater power and offers them a safe haven. Turns out, Eric Lanchier, better known as Magneto, is alive. No surprises there. And the impact from Asteroid M that was widely thought as the cause of his death just made him stronger. As he fights for ownership of Grey Malkin going up against Cable, Cable is only successful in saving X-Force, teleporting them away. He tries to then recover the sentient program called Professor before setting the station to self-destruct. Cable fails to destroy the base as Magneto interferes, and he almost dies in the process, teleporting himself out at the last moment. He was able to remove the core and also retain the override on the station's teleportation. Magneto is back. Magneto contemplates the events on Avalon and the fight with Cable. He believes that the fight was more of a philosophical one where Cable succeeded in foiling Magneto's plan to control and indoctrinate the minds of future mutants by retrieving the core on Avalon. He then decides to pay a visit to the X-Men, offering them sanctuary. In the meantime, the Acolytes finally realize Fabian Cortez had been lying to them and gang up on him. Vought says that using her powers to turn Cortez into mist would be letting him off easy. Exodus, however, reminds Amelia that Magneto is a merciful man and doesn't wish to punish Cortez for his ambition and that the Acolytes should follow suit. He then urges the Acolytes to prepare themselves for the ascension to Avalon. Unhappy that they couldn't exact their revenge, the Acolytes take heed to Exodus and leave. It's the day of Illyana's funeral, and the Professor has never felt more of a failure. He questions his actions of convincing mutants to leave their families and homes to give everything up to fight for a world that fears and hates them. Charles ultimately resolves to not let anyone else down. Meanwhile, Magneto is on Avalon and decides that the Earth is unfit for the future of mutants and that they must choose to settle down or rather up in space among the stars. As Magneto puts on his iconic helmet, it's made pretty clear that the mutants' need for destruction to pave the way for creation remains unchanged. He finds his purpose, the welfare of all mutants and their need for Magneto. Down on Earth, Shadowcat expresses her wish to have a normal life, where her best friend would still be alive. Storm takes Kitty flying and explains to her how inevitable change is, and life goes on no matter what. As soon as they touch the ground, they see Colossus burning his own paintings of his family. Kitty tries to get Colossus to grieve the death of his sister and asks him what he feels, to which he simply replies, "Nothing." Kitty then runs away crying, clutching Illyana's painting. The X-Men are mourning the loss of Illyana at her funeral, and Magneto, in typical fashion, decides that it's the best time to make his comeback, accompanied by the Acolytes. Magneto makes grand claims that he doesn't want to fight the X-Men, some of whom are his former comrades, but came with the intention of offering salvation to the mutant population. He brings Avalon down to the Earth's atmosphere. The Acolytes state they intend to wipe out all of humanity from the safety of their space station, Avalon. As Magneto makes his speech, Wolverine tries to attack him but fails, as his electromagnetic powers force Wolverine's claws to retract. While Magneto uses his magnetic powers to immobilize the X-Men, Bishop has been absorbing his power all this time and finally blasts it back at Magneto. Rogue tries to literally kiss some sense into Magneto as she tries to absorb his powers, only to realize that Magneto is now much stronger than he was. Colossus, in what's a shocking but also understandable move, decides to switch sides and join Magneto. Having had enough, Professor X uses his telepathy to hurl Avalon back into space, along with Magneto choosing not to kill him, but certain that Magneto will return. A death mission. The United States of America is once again at the center of strategizing to save the world. They decide to initiate the alpha and beta parameters of the Magneto protocols. At Avalon, Magneto is angry. Installed around the Earth is an electromagnetic mesh created and supported by a network of satellites. Although he'd be safe in his near-Earth haven in space, the mesh makes returning to Earth a death sentence. This in turn disrupts his ability to recruit new converts. He slashes through Earth's electromagnetic field, triggering an electromagnetic pulse wave. As chaos ensues, the X-Men, armed with alien Shi'ar technology, are able to restore their electronics and gather together to assess the damage caused. Cyclops leads the assessment meeting to strategize and points out the culprit behind the act, Magneto. Professor X springs into action quite literally by putting on a Shi'ar exoskeleton linked to his brain, enabling him to walk. He assembles just 3 pairs of mutants to synergize their mutant powers, that of Wolverine and Gambit, Jean and himself, and Quicksilver and Rogue. Even after apprehensions expressed by Storm, Beast, and Cyclops, Professor X with his contingent sets out to Avalon. The team ascends into Avalon, Magneto's abode in space where he's backed by his ardent followers of fanatical mutants. The team sneaks into the ship undetected, much to their own surprise. Without much trouble, they get to the control room and activate the ship's teleportation system by inserting a disc containing the tech to bypass the alien technology that powers the ship. The teleportation guaranteed to prevent any outside interference. Just then, Magneto ambushes the team with all his might, and the first to spring into action against Magneto is Quicksilver. As they fight, with fists as well as words, Professor X tries to get into Magneto's mind with the combined telepower of his and Jean's. In time, Wolverine also comes face to face with Magneto, and in a fight that stretched too far, Magneto finally does the unthinkable against Wolverine. He rips him from the inside out. Magneto makes his adamantium skeleton coil out like barbed wire. Jean is tasked with using all of her power now to keep his body together. Xavier manages to rob Magneto out of his hatred and wipes his mind, sending Magneto into a coma. Colossus arrives, revealing he let them into the ship by not taking any protective action when he saw them coming. Returning to Earth, from the aftermath of an ended-all battle, the X-Men return to Earth in their jet, Blackbird. Jean has been desperately holding Wolverine together. They realize that his mutant healing factor and his will to live is taxed to their maximum limits. To heal Wolverine's shattered psyche, Xavier and Jean enter his mind. It would appear that the damage from Magneto has shredded the fabric of his mind into utter chaos. They witness for once the traumatic memories interwoven into the fabric of Logan's personality. Meanwhile, the Blackbird too, like the damage Logan has taken, doesn't seem to hold up any longer. The landing maneuver has rendered its system and structure to crack up, while the team is barely managing to fly it, and while Logan has come close to an inch of dying. In his mind, amidst the chaos of his cold, dark past, he sees a white light emerge, but he senses in the background Jean's desperate helplessness. In fact, she's hanging onto the door of the crashing Blackbird. Despite his life grasp bottoming out, despite his healing factor going haywire, Logan emerges from out of his unconsciousness and grabs her hand. They somehow make it back safely. Weeks pass, and as Wolverine heals, he's adamant about getting in the danger room, where the X-Men train. He wants to prove to the X-Men that he's still got it in him to be on the team. The X-Men, including Xavier, watch as Wolverine fends off the battle droids. They see Wolverine's not holding up like he used to. He appears to take more damage, and the healing isn't as swift. The ultimate shocker being Wolverine's claws are no more the adamantium, but rather Bone's natural human bones. Sitting by the pond with Jubilee, who had been assigned the duty to take care of Logan, he confides in her that for as long as he can remember, his claws had always been made out of adamantium. But discovering he always had his iconic claws long before adamantium was bonded into his body means that there's a past that's long been erased from his memory, and that he needs to uncover it. Doubtful about his capability, he worries he'd no longer be an ideal fit in the X-Men. Wolverine decides to leave in his Harley. The aftermath. In the lower decks of Avalon, we see a battered and captive Simon Hall, Neophyte, the youngest ex-member of the Acolytes who was beamed out of the Acolytes' headquarters on Earth by Fabian Cortez after he discovered the truth about his leader. He faces death for allegedly helping Moira McTaggart escape while she was being held captive. Colossus offers him a second chance as he believes Magneto would do the same. Up above, on the spaceship Avalon that Exodus now controls, Magneto's comatose body is being guarded by Exodus. He descends to where Neophyte's being held to execute the trial, and just about sentences him to presumably death when Colossus chimes in and makes a statement about how Magnus only did what he felt was right on grounds of compassion. And if Exodus was really Magneto's voice, he'd spare him a death penalty. Exodus senses the agreement of other Acolytes to Colossus's reasonings, and he decides to send Simon to Earth, a permanent exile. Exodus returns to his chamber. He's consumed by self-doubt regarding his leadership, and more importantly, the faith and trust that the Acolytes had toward him, especially given how they leaned toward Colossus's point of view. Checking on Wolverine, issues 90 to 118, 145. Logan meets Creed, number 90. Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, is being held in the Xavier Mansion, which doubles up as the school for gifted youngsters. Clutching his legendary blue and yellow mask, Logan is trying to talk to his brother Creed. He retorts to Logan's attempt to talk by baring his teeth and calling him names. To Sabretooth's unhelpful response, Logan explains that the consequences of Sabretooth not cooperating are very dire. Hearing this, Sabretooth charges at Logan with his claws out, saying that they will surely talk, while he's ripping out Logan's guts. The duo is separated by a containment field. Sabretooth tries to push through the electric force field, scarily stretching it forward with his face, and is zapped back while Wolverine admits that Sabretooth is not a mere elephant, but something much more dangerous. Sabretooth keeps on provoking Logan for a fight, but Logan backs off, saying that he's committed to the team and that he'll always put their needs before his impulses, even though he'd quite like to rip Creed's throat out. Sabretooth continues calling him names while Logan walks away. Logan tries to carry on with his daily life, working out in the gym, trying to distract himself with exercise, having his meal in front of the television. After switching off the television, Wolverine tries to sleep, but his paranoia takes over him, making him change rooms for the night. At the same time, Sabretooth is also watching the television and decides it's time to make his move. Sabretooth attempts to escape, saying that he's ready for a world of hurt as he breaks through the containment field successfully. But Wolverine is waiting for him outside his cell with restraints ready. He asks Sabretooth to put the restraints on and come peacefully, or they can fight it out and that won't end well for Creed. Sabretooth lashes out at him and they start fighting. Logan and Creed are going at each other, though Logan goes on the defensive. That's until Sabretooth takes Silver Fox's name and promises he'll go after the X-Men next, starting with Jean Grey, Heather Hudson, and moving on to the younger ones like Kitty Pryde and Jubilee. Hearing this, Wolverine has had enough. In response, he bashes Sabretooth's head to the wall, shouting that he's tired of controlling his wild side, in response to Sabretooth's jabs and taunts of him being an animal just like him. The fight ends with Logan holding Sabretooth against the wall, Creed's face dangerously poised between Logan's claws. We're left wondering if Logan has finally gotten rid of his arch-nemesis and embraced his feral side, or will the man in him win the battle? Will he pop his third claw, slicing through Sabretooth's head? The Beast Within, number 91. In the aftermath of surrendering to his primal instincts and incapacitating his longtime adversary Sabretooth, Wolverine finds himself drifting away from the sanctuary of the mansion. He doesn't regret his actions, but he is remorseful of his wild side taking over. His feral nature grows more dominant, prompting him to disturbingly stalk the Higgins family. The Higgins children are innocently gathering flowers, and Logan becomes a silent observer, veiled by the shadows of his unraveling humanity. The evolving transformation of Wolverine raises profound concerns among his fellow X-Men. That very evening, Professor X, Storm, and Beast convene to strategize on how to address the escalating situation. The humanity that Logan had fiercely fought to preserve over the years appears to be eroding, compelling the X-Men to devise a plan to reverse this. As night falls, Wolverine prowls near the X-Mansion, his actions under the watchful eyes of Psylocke, Cyclops, and Phoenix. Attempting to delve into Wolverine's mind, the telepath Jean encounters an impenetrable wall of primal redness, stoking fear among the X-Men. Scott openly wonders about the potential targets of Wolverine's next outburst. Sensing the apprehension, Logan retreats into the woods, unleashing a blood-curdling howl that reverberates across the Westchester property, jolting his fellow mutants awake. Hearing Wolverine's unsettling howls, Xavier, Storm, and Beast take a closer look at the bioscans of Logan's body post the removal of the adamantium by Magneto. They enlist the expertise of James Hudson, Guardian, in Canada, discovering that the adamantium had hindered Wolverine's natural evolution, constraining his mutation into a feral beast, and its traumatic effects were counteracted by Wolverine's mutant healing factor. Now liberated from this metallic constraint, Logan's body is reverting to its natural evolutionary course, leaving the X-Men astounded and contemplating the necessary steps to take next. Confronting Wolverine outside the Higgins residence, where spousal violence unfolds, Beast, aka Hank McCoy, Storm, and Charles plead with Logan to return to the mansion for further tests. Wolverine, however, resists, asserting that some changes are inevitable and that he must embrace them. As the tumultuous scene unfolds, Charles tells Logan that he knows the real reason why Logan is lurking outside the woods. He's afraid he might hurt his fellow X-Men. Storm adds that she believes in Logan and that he hasn't lost his love and honor to the mutation. At the same time, Mrs. Linda Higgins bursts out of the house in distress, running away from her husband who was ready to deal her a world of pain. Intercepting her husband's violent pursuit, Wolverine's ready to strike with his claws out as the X-Men try to reason with Logan. He's punched in the face by Mrs. Higgins, who's still loyal to her husband and angrily tells Wolverine to back off. She defends her husband, saying he really loves his family. Storm tries to comfort her, saying there are agencies and shelters that she can go to get away from the violence. Mrs. Higgins asks the X-Men to leave her property, calling them freaks. Charles again implores Logan to come back home, to the school, so they can help, but he insists on remaining outside the mansion until solutions are found. He comes clean about his intention of not running away anymore and promises to stay close by. Highlighting the X-Men's hypocrisy in intervening in his life while allowing a battered wife to endure abuse, Logan walks away into the wilderness, leaving the X-Men contemplating the complexities of their actions. Wolverine vanishes into the night once again, but not before giving them a talking to about how Mrs. Higgins' life is still in danger and that they could have prevented things taking an ugly turn in the future. The night once again claims Wolverine as he vanishes into the darkness, the echoes of his howls haunting the estate, which once was a safe space for the tortured mutant. For science! Again, number 92. Professor Charles Xavier, Hank McCoy, and the team of Canadian superheroes, James and Heather Hudson, Guardian and Vindicator, are running experiments on the healing factor of Wolverine and Sabretooth. They come to the conclusion that the two have the same healing factor, as Sabretooth seems to have recovered from the damage that Logan inflicted on him in their last confrontation. Logan, however, is not convinced. He's paranoid that Sabretooth is putting up a pretense of being lobotomized to avoid consequences. While analyzing the holoscans, the team is looking at the trauma on his brain where Logan has pierced his brain, and they conclude that if Creed didn't have his mutant healing, he would have been dead. Professor X then pulls up the holoscan, proving that Sabretooth has recovered from his brain literally being sliced by Wolverine. There's no visible sign of trauma anymore, but the professor isn't sure if the behavioral and psychological changes are temporary or not, as that's still unexplored territory for mutants. Wolverine is lying next to his estranged half-brother, contemplating whether his arch-nemesis can be rehabilitated and brought to the right side of the law. After the team's done with running their tests on Creed, they want to keep testing on Logan. Logan realizes that the team is thinking that he's regressing to his animalistic side. However, he wants to prove that he's not losing that battle with the animal within him and show them that he is still the same man. Logan's then sent to the danger room to gauge how differently he'll react with the same simulation of the Arctic ice storm module. Wolverine's obviously uneasy about the wires as they remind him of his traumatic past. Analyzing the readings, Professor X comes to the conclusion that the simulations are triggering some kind of deep-seated memory in his psyche, mostly of his past, the Weapon X project, something Logan has declined to comment on repeatedly. At the same time, Wolverine feels cold, and together with the wires attached to him, it feels like a half-remembered dream, which he considers a nightmare. The rage builds up inside him, and there's a seething anger that just wants to burst out of him. Wolverine lashes out with his claws extended and attacks Heather. The professor then commands the team to terminate the simulation, trying to calm Logan down by pointing out that there's no real threat. They're all friends trying to help him and that there's no need for his claws. Wolverine recalls his time in Buffalo Wood where he came across the corpses of animals with their teeth, liver, and claws extracted. He wonders what beast kills but doesn't eat his prey. He gets his answer soon enough as he smells humans nearby and concludes that humans are the worst kind of predator. Armed with rifles, they fire at Wolverine, and he manages to outrun them only to run into two other humans who he thinks are part of the same group of poachers. He doesn't quite smell the fear in them, but attacks anyway, knowing they're human. It's revealed that that was the first time he met Heather and James, and along with Wolverine, we're brought back to the danger room where he apologizes to Heather for attacking her. Realizing what he did, he wants to run away, and Heather points out that Wolverine's attack, although by mistake, was in self-defense, and that itself proves that he's not a mindless animal. Logan runs off anyway after this incident, saying that he needs some fresh air. As the night falls, he takes off into the forest. He tells himself he ran away from friends who are trying to help him because he needs to get away from the stench of people that's getting too much for him to handle. Heather and James are discussing the next steps they need to take to understand the gravity of Wolverine's condition. She points out that they can't just leave Logan out there in his current state, to which James replies that the only other way would be to lock him up and confine him like Sabretooth. Heather downright refuses to do so, saying Logan is not a cold-blooded killer, even in his feral state. She believes there's still humanity left in him. He's compassionate and also has the ability to empathize, which wouldn't be possible if Logan had indeed let his animalistic side take over. As it turns out, Logan ran away with the monitoring system still attached to him, and the team can use that to feed the transmitted data into a holographic display to observe what changes Logan's body is going through. Hank notices a spike in his graph, which indicates that his mutant senses are reaching an ultra-heightened animalistic state, which can only mean one thing, that the animal is taking control of the man. Meanwhile, Logan, who's now run quite far off, is standing on a cliff. While he did outrun the smell of humans, he realizes he can't outrun car fumes. As he's looking down, he notices a car and gets a familiar stench of alcohol. The car is on a crash course with two riders on a motorbike at a blind curve. At the same time, in a lab in the Xavier mansion, the team of scientists are trying to find out where Logan has gone. They're also monitoring his physical activity, and with the changes that are happening, they conclude that Logan is getting ready for action. They were able to generate a magnified contour graph from the tests and track down his location. Wolverine realizes that the driver is the man who lives next to the Xavier mansion and abuses his wife. He's tempted to leave the man to his own devices, but he decides that the girl riding pillion on the bike has a future in front of her. So he tries to stop the car, but Higgins, remembering the beatdown he got from Wolverine, speeds up and tries to run him over. The team notices a huge increase in the mutant psi activity. and he's experiencing a lot of pain from the broken bones, damaged lungs, and other injuries he suffered. Thanks to his mutant healing, he's able to stand up, brushing off the pain, while the car crashes into the cliff and explodes. In the lab, the scientists are stunned by Wolverine's healing capabilities and are shocked when they see Logan extending his claws. Worried about what he's about to do, they're relieved to see Logan reaching inside that flaming wreck of the car and rescuing a drunk Higgins, proving that he's still a kind and empathetic human being and not a feral beast. With the crisis averted, Logan picks up a can of beer that was not clear from the car wreck. He opens it as a biker passes by, who doesn't stop knowing how much trouble Logan can be. Wolverine drinks the beer, tosses the can away, and walks off into the night. He barely registers, but decides to ignore the fact that he's being watched by Zoe Culloden and a colleague of hers with Lando, Luckman, and Lake. Better known as LL&L, this interdimensional holding company / law firm has a history with Logan, more often than not maintaining his assets and property for him while he carried on with his superhero duties. The duo are surprised that Wolverine just barely notices their presence. However, Zoe is still committed to keeping tabs on Logan. Enemies old and new. 93. In a specially constructed prison cell in the heart of Edinburgh, Scotland, Cyber, a formidable enemy of the mutant Wolverine, finds himself under close scrutiny by a team of specialists who have, with some help from Dr. McTaggart, ensured that this dangerous entity remains secretly contained within the prison. Cyber, regaining consciousness, harbors a burning determination to escape and exact revenge upon Wolverine. He seems to be a very sore loser as he shouts out his plans to first lay waste to the town he's held captive in and kill all the people there. Then he'll go after Wolverine, killing him and turning his face into a wallet just so that he can keep it in his back pocket and sit on it. What he doesn't know is that there's a dark force on the horizon, ready to free him from captivity. As Cyber contemplates his impending liberation, the ominous Dark Riders materialize within the facility. Spine introduces himself and Life Force, who can siphon the life of a living creature and absorb it into herself. Driven by the singular purpose of freeing Cyber and delivering him to their master Genesis, the Dark Riders ruthlessly attack the defenseless humans. Swift and deadly, the Dark Riders kill the prison personnel, liberating Cyber from his high-tech prison. In an instant, they vanish. Meanwhile, at the Xavier Institute, Wolverine enjoys tracking a deer. However, his tranquility is shattered by the disruptive arrival of Sam Guthrie, aka Cannonball, a novice X-Man whose reckless actions scare off the deer. Wolverine, irritated by the interruption, challenges Cannonball to a race through the woods. At the same time, within the confines of the X-Mansion, Juggernaut, recovering from a coma induced by a mysterious assailant named Onslaught, awakens with a vengeance. Fueled by a desire to avoid another surprise attack, Juggernaut forcefully dons his iconic helmet and escapes after smashing through a wall. Beast, Bishop, Tabitha, and the Professor try to stop him with no luck. Beast inquires about the mysterious onslaught that Juggernaut named, but Bishop chalks it up to rantings of a man who just came out of a coma and wants to go after Juggernaut. Charles stops them from doing so and tells them that Juggernaut, who's his step-brother, is not to be taken lightly. He asks Tabitha to inform Storm about Juggernaut breaking out. As Wolverine and Cannonball finish their unconventional race, Cannonball emerges as the winner. To celebrate, they get drinks at the Auger Inn. Juggernaut, now free, barrels through the inn, intent on asserting his presence. He demands to be served and proceeds to drink off a beer tap. Seeing this, an intoxicated Cannonball wants to confront him and prove to Logan that he's not one to run away at the first sight of trouble. Wolverine, recognizing the potential for disaster, attempts to defuse the situation, trying to calm Cannonball down and to wait for backup, but his efforts prove futile. Cannonball confronts Juggernaut, oblivious to the risks involved. After he's whacked away like a fly, Wolverine intervenes, trying to convey to Juggernaut that the young mutant is his responsibility and that he should back off, as he knows Juggernaut doesn't want to waste his fighting skills on a young new mutant. Surprisingly, Juggernaut backs down, realizing the futility of engaging in battle. As Juggernaut departs, Wolverine goes to the aid of Cannonball and wonders why Juggernaut backed off so quietly. Storm arrives, attributing the damage to Wolverine and Cannonball, displaying skepticism toward their claims of encountering the Juggernaut. Wolverine tries making his case, saying that he was just trying to treat Cannonball like an equal instead of coddling him, to which Storm retorts that it's Wolverine who's been coddled all this while and that he better start taking responsibility for his actions. Cannonball tries supporting Logan, saying Juggernaut just ran out the back. The trio go check. At the same time, the Juggernaut encounters Zoe Culloden and her mysterious associate. Employing advanced technology provided by Lando, Luckman, and Lake, they transport Juggernaut to an alternate dimension, ensuring he doesn't create any more problems, leaving the X-Men bewildered when they try to make sense of the apparent disappearance of their foe. Cannonball says he's sure he heard Juggernaut talking to somebody, and Wolverine confirms saying one of the voices seemed familiar. Wolverine, ever perceptive, senses an unseen presence, unaware that Zoe and her associate are right there, hidden by cloaking technology. Logan comes back, 94. Cyber, who was broken out of his high-tech prison, is smoking a cigar while contemplating that the leader of the Dark Riders must think highly of him as they went through a lot of trouble to rescue him. The Dark Riders are going somewhere on a jet. Cyborg asks why they didn't just teleport, as that'd be faster. The Dark Riders inform him that they didn't want anybody to know their destination, where Cyber is scheduled to meet with a mysterious entity. They arrive at a place that used to be called Akaba, but is now in ruins and scattered with the dead bodies of its inhabitants. Cyber comments that the overtly grotesque visuals are not impressing him, and that causes a confrontation among the team of supervillains. With a sandstorm brewing, they start to wonder how they're going to reach their destination if their transport doesn't arrive soon. An anonymous voice says there's no transport and that they'd need to walk. The voice belongs to Jamil, who appears as their guide. He leads the way as Cyber wonders how they're supposed to walk through a sandstorm. To their surprise, a tunnel is paved that takes them to meet their leader, Genesis. At the recreational room in Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters in Massachusetts, the members of Generation X are playing a game of football. While the game's going on, Jubilee waits in increasing anticipation for the arrival of her old friend Wolverine, who was supposed to come by for a visit. It's been 5 days since he got in touch with her, and at this point, the other members of Generation X don't really hold as much faith in his arrival. Skin, Angelo Espinosa, in particular, passes a comment about Wolverine not being quite right in the head, and that'd explain why he didn't show up. He blocks Jubilee's shot with his tiny plastic defender, sending the ball outside the table, and Jubilee, with a wonderful header, not only bonks the ball back inside, but also scores a goal. Skin protests, saying that she cheated, to which Jubilee replies that's how soccer is played, and asks him to take back what he said about Wolverine. As if on cue, Chamber, Jonathan Jono Starsmore, taps the window by which M, Monet St. Croix, is sitting, startling her. He alerts her of the presence of somebody coming out of the forest. The mutants go to the window to check, essentially suffocating M, wondering who the mysterious being is and that they went through a lot of trouble to get to the house. Husk, Paige Guthrie, observes that the road is on the other side of the school and that either the person took the long way around or walked 10 miles through a forest. Jubilee says that mysterious person isn't some stranger and that she'd recognize that walk even from afar. Wolverine is back, and he's hungry. Upon Logan's arrival at the school, he's greeted by the headmasters Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, and Emma Frost, aka the White Queen. While helping himself to food and chomping down on some meat, Logan recounts his journey from New York and boasts about evading the security systems installed by Emma around the school. He describes his thought process. The security sensors were set up in a way that wouldn't be triggered by the movements of small animals like rabbits, raccoons, or deer. Naturally, Logan thought they were set for detecting unusual weight, but the forest surrounding the school also had black bears, so Logan figured that the sensors were set to detect height. So, all he had to do was crawl through to the end of the forest. Frost asks whether Wolverine has stowed his bike on the other side of the forest, to which Wolverine replies he couldn't ride up to the school and traveled by running through forests at night. Reaching the school wasn't easy, as he had to hop fences, backyards, and crossing states was the most difficult, as he's at a loss for words to explain what he's been through. Frost is unimpressed and not interested in Wolverine's stories. She says that she doesn't really need him there, but since his dramatic entry, he could give the students a lesson on fighting skills. Jubilee is clearly not tolerant of Wolverine's tardiness and questions why he bothered to come. Logan, undergoing personal changes and disliking indoor spaces, reveals 2 reasons: to impart his fighting expertise to the students, and because Jubilee personally invited him. The next morning, Wolverine initiates a combat session in the biosphere with Sync, Skin, Husk, M, and Jubilee. He emphasizes the importance of the right attitude in fighting, a positive one, and insists that if they engage, it should be to win and defeat the enemy. When Husk asks for the correct course of action that should be taken when they simply want to capture and not kill their enemies, Wolverine emphasizes that they should run and not engage in a fight then. He makes it clear that they should only enter a fight with the clear intention of winning. Banshee and the White Queen monitor the session, with Emma expressing reservations about Logan's viewpoint and making it clear that as headmasters, they don't personally endorse the same. Wolverine retorts, saying that when it really comes down to it, the only 2 options mutants are really left with are run or fight. Banshee is positive Wolverine's training will help the novice mutants, while Emma admits she's surprised Banshee believes in Wolverine after news of his recent behavioral changes and his last encounter with Cannonball. In the training, Wolverine instructs Skin to attack him. Despite Skin's attempt to ensnare Wolverine, Logan counters with a lethal blow, emphasizing the lesson to focus on the opponent's eyes not their hands. The next task involves tracking Wolverine in the biosphere's wilderness. The members of Generation X express their reservations about Wolverine. M finds this whole exercise boring. Sync feels Wolverine is being too hard on them and is just downright rude. Skin agrees, while Jubilee jumps to Wolverine's defense, saying that while she agrees Wolverine's methods are harsh, they just can't dismiss him because he literally walked from Westchester just to share his hard-earned knowledge with them. Sync expresses his disdain for Logan and says if he's supposed to follow in his path, he'd rather not be an X-Man. The team start their search, and while initially unsuccessful, Husk locates him, only to see him frozen, his eyes red and intently listening for the slightest sound. Logan senses a presence and asks the students to slowly leave the forest, back up into the school and make a run for the exit. Skin realizes Logan isn't running a drill and that they're in real danger. Logan rushes into the control room to confront Banshee and Emma, suspecting their involvement. As the duo tell Logan they have no knowledge of his concerns, they're instructed to shut down the biosphere, restrict access especially at night, and run a full system scan first thing in the morning. The next morning, Sean and Emma have run all possible tests on the biosphere and don't find anything wrong. Emma feels that Logan is paranoid because of the fact that he's living in the forest behind the Xavier Institute. Jubilee and Skin, however, reveal that they saw something. Emma sarcastically comments that Logan's lesson to the young mutants went so well that even they believe him, and asks Skin what he saw. Skin replies he was having trouble sleeping and got up to make himself a hot chocolate when he noticed Wolverine making his way down the hall toward the biosphere. He woke Jubilee up to investigate, and the two followed Logan into the biosphere. There, Wolverine was fighting an energy being inside the biosphere. Wolverine, using his berserker rage, repelled the entity, identifying itself as a token, forcing it to flee. But not before it knocked over Skin and Jubilee. After the encounter, Logan left the Institute, going back into the woods. Banshee explains the nature of a token as a wraith of the dead, or worse, of a living being. Emma dismisses his explanation as rubbish and thinks that the mysterious being Wolverine fought had something to do with the nature of the biosphere, as its self-regenerative qualities are similar to Logan's healing factor. Jubilee asks how Logan was able to fend it off, to which Banshee clarifies that Wolverine's presence itself was enough, as Logan expelled the token by exploiting its aversion to its own kind. Wolverine Far From Home, 95. In Aqaba, Egypt, Cyber is fighting Wolverine. As the two fight it out with classic comic book banter, it becomes quite obvious that Cyber is fighting a Wolverine robot. With a lot of dialogue and incessant back and forth, it's arguably a good outlet for Cyber to let it all out after being imprisoned. Cyber's talking to the robot as if it's the real thing, calling it a two-bit sawed-off runt and that he's gonna cause him a lot of pain. The robot replies he's going to be the one causing all the pain, as the two start fighting. Kudos to the robot's programmer who got Wolverine's demeanor almost down to the T. As Robot Wolverine attacks, Cyber commends its banter but is able to block it. He then attacks, throwing Robot Wolverine off, taunting him to attack with his fists while claiming he's the best at what he does, something that Wolverine is known for doing. He also goads him to call himself a knucklehead, like the real Wolverine would. It then goes on full attack mode, pouncing at Cyber, who taunts it some more, asking it to attack his ankles, saying it's time to die. As the robot tries to pierce Cyber's adamantium body with its claws, he shouts it's hardly his time to die, making sure the fight is being recorded. While he's brutally attacking the robot, he comments that he doesn't want them to miss anything, as this is him putting on a show. While he decimates the robot, tearing off its head, he comments that it hardly competes with the real thing, but that his point is made. In reality, all of this was a ploy by the Dark Riders leader Genesis to understand the physical makeup of Cyber. The Dark Riders thank him for the demonstration. With its tensile strength and Rockwell hardness off the charts and no impurities or additives, the Dark Riders note that Cyber's body is reinforced with pure high-grade adamantium. Unfortunately, it's still bonded to Cyber's human body, but they have plans in place to correct that. Meanwhile, in New York City, Logan, seeking solace, departs from the woods near the Xavier estate and heads to Manhattan. He's talking to himself, recalling his friends telling him he's going feral, and that the animal in him is winning the battle that has been ongoing since he became a mutant. What he doesn't know, though, is that he's trailed by his old allies, Guardian and Vindicator. Guardian is rightly concerned about the potential danger Logan poses to innocents, and that he's their responsibility. They're morally liable and accountable for his actions if they knowingly let him get into trouble, as he's much more dangerous now. Heather tries to make a case for Logan, saying they just have to trust him. She calmly explains to James that they can't supervise Logan for the rest of his life or lock him up thinking that he might do something untoward. In the city, Wolverine encounters Dirtnap, a large man with a red smiley face on his black shirt. He offers Logan various pleasures like mind expansion, stupefaction, and everything that Logan might want. He just needs to follow Dirtnap up some stairs. He grabs hold of Logan's shirt to lure him, but Logan forcefully lets go, prompting Dirtnap to comment he's missing out. Noticing this encounter, Heather points out that Logan didn't lose it, while James argues it was just his first interaction. Down below, Dirtnap targets a young boy with promises of cheap computers. Wolverine smells something fishy and turns around. James gets ready to stop Wolverine while Heather simply points out that Logan hasn't done anything. Realizing the ploy, Wolverine confronts Dirtnap and asks the kid to run away. The kid, fascinated by the sweet deal of getting a power Macintosh for a measly $50, doesn't listen to Wolverine, making Dirtnap smirk, and he asks Wolverine to leave as it's none of his business. Drawing his claws, Wolverine says it is his business, as Dirtnap targeted the kid to get his attention specifically and is using him as bait. He wants to know why Dirtnap would go so far to get his attention only to be interrupted by Guardian, who assumed Wolverine popping his claws was the bloodlust taking over him, making him lose control. Heather and James swoosh down to help Logan as he runs towards Dirtnap with his claws out. Just in time, James tackles Logan to the ground, almost disbalancing his wife mid-air. The commotion causes Dirtnap to vanish into the crowd. James asks Logan to let Dirtnap go, but is thrown off as Logan senses something dangerous about the thug. As the police arrive, James and Heather explain the situation to Logan, who's displeased by their covert surveillance. She tries to calm James down, explaining that Logan was just trying to help the little boy, and that he should cut Logan, who is one of his best friends, some slack. And during their flight through the city, news of Graydon Creed's presidential aspirations reaches Senator Robert Kelly. Kelly is surprised by this and angry at his staff for not informing him earlier. While the senator's answering calls from news channels about this new development, his aide, Noah Dubois, gets a call from Zoe Culloden from Landau, Luckman and Lake. Culloden reports that the operative sent to nab Wolverine acted prematurely and that he isn't far along enough in his regression to get tempted. However, their plan is on track with a rendezvous scheduled in the Canadian Rockies. At Hopper's coffee shop, Wolverine talks about the good old days, but presently, the Alpha Flight team is no longer operative and the X-Men have changed. Logan tries to point out to James that change is the only constant. James coldly states that Logan doesn't sound like himself. He feels that Logan has given up on himself, but neither him nor Heather have given up on him, and that there must be something that can be done. Heather points out James's emotional distance and says that maybe all that Logan needs are his friends who will patiently listen to him. The conversation is interrupted when Logan detects Dirtnap's scent and leaps out the window in pursuit. Discovering Dirtnap has taken the form of the previously saved boy, Logan demands the creature release him. When Guardian and Vindicator intervene, Dirtnap consumes Logan, attempting to take his form, but Logan's healing factor causes a violent rejection. Dirtnap transforms into a rat and escapes. Despite offers of assistance, Logan insists on pursuing Dirtnap alone, embracing his wild side that he's loathed all these years. Under watchful eyes. 96. Wolverine and Storm decide to take Cannonball and Caliban on a hiking adventure in the Canadian Rockies. Once Storm and Wolverine reach the summit, they hurry the two inexperienced mutant heroes to witness the breathtaking sunset. Caliban complains that his breath is already taken away by the physical climb up the mountain. Cannonball and Caliban express their dissatisfaction at being hurried up, thinking that Storm and Wolverine were in some kind of danger. Wolverine says that the young mutants need to let nature take over them, as watching sunsets in virtual reality is definitely not the same as witnessing it in real life. Storm explains that food nourishes the body, while physical activity and appreciating nature nourishes the soul. Caliban complains about not having fun, while Sam gripes about the heat and sweat involved. Storm conjures up a miniature rainstorm to cool them down. Logan instructs them to find a dry spot for a campfire while he goes looking for some firewood to start preparing the campfire for the night. As the campfire blazes that night, with Caliban experiencing the joy of s'mores for the first time, Cannonball turns to Wolverine and Storm, eager for tales of fights and adventures from their days as young X-Men. Logan delves into a moment from his early days with the X-Men, shortly after his separation from Mariko. In the aftermath of the heartbreak, Logan returned to the X-Mansion inebriated, seeking solace. Storm, concerned for his well-being, led him to her greenhouse attic where she cultivated a variety of exotic plants. There, she unveiled a unique mutant plant, the sole one of its kind. Cutting it, she handed it to Logan, assuring him that just like a flower, he's one of a kind as well. She told him that beautiful things bloom and fade and that they must be appreciated throughout their lifetime. Storm suggested the flower would complement the picture of Mariko in his room. When the boys expressed disappointment that the story lacks a dramatic battle with an evil foe, Wolverine clarifies that the narrative's essence lies in emphasizing the X-Men's commitment to looking out for their own. Storm compliments Logan back, saying he's helped her and the rest of the X-Men too in the same way. However, the sweet moment is abruptly interrupted as Wolverine senses something in the woods. Hearing this, Landau, Luckman and Lake employee Zoe Culloden and her colleague Noah, who are surveilling Wolverine, are worried they've been made and question Logan's ability to detect them despite their cloaking devices. Zoe astutely points out that what Logan has detected is the grizzly bear that's approaching them from behind. Acting impulsively, Noah attacks the bear with his blasters, deviating from their intended mission and flouting the rules. Distressed by this breach of their charter, Zoe opens a portal, swiftly pulling herself and Noah out of the area. The grizzly, still agitated and fearful, charges toward the campsite where the mutants are. As the three mutants get ready to confront the creature, Wolverine intervenes, cautioning against aggression by highlighting the bear's injured and frightened state. Storm questions how he sensed that, and Wolverine replies that it's an after effect of his regression. Quickly, they scramble up a tree, allowing the distressed bear to find solace in the food they left behind. With the sunrise, Storm praises his ability to resolve the grizzly situation without resorting to violence. She reminisces about the time he saved her life using the limited breath in his lungs when Magneto had trapped her underwater. Caliban and Cannonball playfully banter about saving each other's lives, jokingly suggesting a prohibition on kissing between them. While they engage in banter, Wolverine contemplates privately on their lack of understanding regarding the profound changes he's undergoing. His thoughts delve into the shifting perceptions he's experiencing. His regression has made him wary of the most minute changes in the wind. His ears pick up at the sound of footsteps coming from miles away. He's not losing his speech or sensibility, but is slowly realizing that he now sees people in a different light, with some appearing as prey in his altered perspective. Back in Aqaba, Egypt, the examinations on Cyber are concluded, and the Dark Riders entice him into a room on the pretext of running more tests to gauge the tensile strength of his adamantium. He asks why the Dark Riders are so interested in his adamantium, and points out that they can't get it off because it's bonded to him. Upon realizing the room lacks windows or doors, Cyber senses that something peculiar is going on and starts fighting with the Dark Riders. Despite initially overpowering them, Cyber's advantage is short-lived as Genesis bursts through a control room window, incapacitating him with a plasma rifle. Genesis then tosses Cyber into the room and seals the door. As Cyber regains consciousness, he becomes the latest victim of Genesis' mutant Death Watch beetles, mechanical creatures that are about to devour every trace of flesh on his body, leaving only the prized adamantium behind, the true objective Genesis had pursued all along. Cyber Vigilance 97. Logan investigates the disappearance of Cyber from his underground prison in Scotland. He gets a scent of a few other mutants who might have helped Cyber escape, attributing his sharp sense of smell to his increasing ferality, but the scent runs cold. He takes the help of his fellow X-Men Jean Grey, who brings a helicopter over to comfortably transport him to the offices of Lando, Luckman and Lake. But Logan chooses to balance on the side of it to visit Zoe Culloden. When they arrive, they see that the building is only 5 stories instead of the 6 that it's supposed to be. Logan and Jean go in to investigate the rubble, and he comments that whatever or whoever caused the damage used weapons that can't easily be found. He frantically searches for and discovers a door labeled WC. Jean remarks if it's a washroom door he was looking for. She hopes every office has one, or ideally 2. Logan points out it's not just a simple door, but that he had once saw an LL&L associate named Chang go through it in Madripoor when Logan had asked him to retrieve funds for him. He recalls Chang wasn't gone for long, but when he came back, his clothes were in tatters. He had a stubble and wielded a different weapon than when he'd gone in. Jean says what Logan saw in his past was a man coming out of the restroom door looking unkempt. She argues that maybe it could have also been a dusty storage closet. Logan recounts that though a little amount of time has passed for him, it looked like the associate had spent weeks in that gate. That makes Logan reveal that the letters WC stand for Warp Chamber and not Water Closet. The duo manage to hold the door. Logan turns the knob, he takes Jean's hand, and the two walk in. After walking through the Warp Chamber, the duo traverse dimensions and fall through another L&L office only to see the staff bludgeoned to death. Logan picks up the scent of someone in the room and extends his claws and attacks the unknown hostile behind a desk in the room. The dangerous hostile turns out to be an office boy named Emmett, who was armed with energy guns and was trying to protect himself. Jean reads his thoughts and stops Logan from attacking. Emmett explains that a woman named Chimera has attacked their office and is stealing all the confidential LL&L files. After the round of explanations, Emmett leads them into a room. However, the door slams and only Logan is let in as Chimera is busy scanning the information gathered about Logan's regression. As Logan shouts, seeking answers, Chimera mocks him and comments that Logan should count himself lucky that Jean isn't in the room to read his thoughts and see the murderous bloodlust in his eyes. She then shoots animated energy blasts at him from her hands and brings Logan just close enough to her feet just before she kills him. Logan closes his fist, takes out his claws and jabs them through her hand. An injured Chimera jumps back and teleports away, promising to come back. Just then, Emmett blasts through the walls, along with Jean explaining that he had to recharge his blast guns. At that point, Zoe teleports into the room and hands Logan a package. When Logan asks what's going on, Zoe plainly states that there's no time to explain, and that he'll just have to trust her like Logan has trusted LL&L with all of his affairs. She then teleports them back to their home dimension. As they fade away, Logan asks Zoe whether the package will explain everything or whether it's just another trap she's set for him. In conversation with Emmett, she states that she can't simply tell Logan what Genesis has planned for him, but has just provided Logan with a fighting chance. Emmett scoffs at Zoe's belief that Logan even has a fighting chance to stop Genesis from executing his plan involving the clawed mutant. Mayhem in Madripoor. 98. Wolverine gains consciousness in the Princess Bar on Madripoor, his old watering hole. He feels hungover as he has a throbbing headache, a bitter taste in his mouth, and he feels extremely nauseous. Chalking all of these sensations to having a good time, he realizes he can't recall the events of the night before. He takes stock of the situation and comes to the realization that he blacked out. While this would normally mean enrolling into a 12-step program to quit drinking, for Wolverine, whose healing factor neutralizes the effects of alcohol, it's most probably just another side effect of his regression caused by the forceful extraction of adamantium from his body. He forces himself to open his eyes, and what he sees is worse than he'd imagined in his worst nightmares. His old friends Archie Corrigan and O'Donnell, along with the other unfortunate patrons, have been violently murdered by what looks like his claws. He pops his claws and notices they're bloody. This makes him second-guess himself and wonder whether he's responsible for this pile of corpses. He recalls he was in Edinburgh with Jean Grey, but then ran into Culloden at one of the offices of Landau, Luckman and Lake in another dimension after walking through a warp door. He remembers Emmett had called Zoe the Expediter, who then sent Jean and him back to Rockefeller Center. Jean asked Logan whether he would open the package Zoe sent him. Logan didn't seem to have lost his sense of humor as he joked he'd open it on his birthday. Jean scolded him, saying that it might be important, so he opened it to discover a folded piece of paper with a key inside. Logan doesn't remember anything after that. As he tries to find his way out, he trips over one of the bodies. Turns out it was the bar owner Rose, who has one last conversation about the good old days with Logan. After he asks whether he's responsible for the mess, and she breathes her last. As Logan is leaving the bar, he finds the key and the piece of paper in his pocket. Outside, the police are ready to arrest him, with Logan recognizing the chief of police, Ty. Ty hopes Logan isn't going to resist arrest, and Wolverine agrees prison is the best place for him, where he won't be able to hurt anybody else. Logan is manacled and chained in a high-security prison cell. He contemplates the awful turn things have taken, and regrets not going back to Canada with James and Heather. With his enhanced hearing skills that have recently become so sharp he can listen through walls, he overhears Chief Ty talking to someone over the phone, explaining he knows all about Logan's mutant healing factor and reports that Wolverine is locked up. He's sending in some people to kill Logan. In the cell, Logan has a bizarre cellmate, a rat with a smiley face on its back. The rat tells Logan he was set up and that everyone is out to get him, but his boss is the only one who will be successful. Wolverine thinks he's hallucinating, but turns out the rat is Dirtnap, the shapeshifter who Logan encountered previously. Logan reaches out and tries to claw Dirtnap, but the chains hold him back. Dirtnap leaves Logan with the information that he hasn't absorbed the young boy completely, and he can still be saved, but Logan has to figure it out how. He escapes, promising to meet Logan again after he completely goes feral. Just then, Logan smells the familiar scent of jasmine and eucalyptus that belongs to Tiger, who brings another package. She hands him the box containing his costume and a hacksaw as Tiger blows him a kiss. He second-guesses freeing himself, but soon realizes that he should trust himself more and asserts that he can't bring harm to his friends. He also contemplates the hours it will take to saw through his chains. Outside, Chief Ty leaves General Coy and Prince Baron to finish off Logan. The General remarks that Logan will soon regret returning to Madripoor. It's then revealed that Coy and Baran were responsible for the dead bodies in the Princess Bar, and that Logan was supposed to die as well since the bar was hit with a rocket grenade. They open Wolverine's cell door to find him partially clothed in his iconic yellow and blue costume. He couldn't put on his shirt due to his shackle. Foolishly, two men wearing gloves fitted with claws similar to that of Wolverine enter the cell with instructions to kill him. As they express their disappointment that Logan doesn't have a fair fighting chance as his hand is shackled, he shockingly breaks his wrist bone, letting his skin rip and licks the blood off his hand, thanks to his mutant healing factor. His wrist heals as he dons the rest of his costume and slashes through the two men, easily killing them. Seeing this, the prince instructs all his thugs to have a go at Logan, promising 500,000 Swiss francs to the man who takes Logan down and a bullet in the head to the one who runs away in fear. Coy and Baran witness firsthand Wolverine's savagery as he kills all the thugs without so much as a word or a sarcastic quip. Baran and Coy, left to their own devices, decide to flee, but in a last bid to gain Logan's mercy, Coy shoots the prince, pinning the blame on him. Coy points a gun at Logan, trying to slowly back off, but he suffers the same fate as the prince, with Tiger pulling the trigger this time. Tiger's driving the getaway car while she tells Logan she accidentally ran over Ty on the way and retrieved the key and the piece of paper he'd taken away from Wolverine during the false arrest. They drive to the address written on the paper, which Logan recognizes as the ex-regional office of Lando, Luckman and Lake, which is now in ruins. Logan finds the door labeled WC and again explains, to Tiger this time, that the letters mean warp chamber, not water closet. The key Zoe gave him fits perfectly in the lock, and before he walks through, he gives Tiger a kiss, asking her to give Rose, Archie and O'Donnell a proper funeral. He meets Zoe while traveling through the warp door and asks her for a proper explanation. Zoe invites him to finally meet his fate. Macabre, Aqaba, 99. Wolverine, accompanied by Zoe Culloden, ventures through the Madripoor warp gate on a mission towards his fate. They end up in the desolate remnants of the city of Aqaba, situated somewhere in Egypt. Recollections of Storm and Cable's descriptions of the place linger on in Logan's mind. Zoe asserts that it's his destiny to uncover the whereabouts of Genesis and his followers, urging him to either untangle the threads of his destiny or, as Logan suggests with a display of his claws, sever them to forge his true path. She departs, intent on pursuing Chimera, the interdimensional pirate she's been chasing, and teleports away. Left to ponder the location of the Citadel where Genesis is supposed to be, Logan encounters Jamil, a figure he remembers from Storm and Cable's narrative. Logan instructs him to lead the way to the Citadel, while cautioning against any attempt at betrayal. In Madripoor, Cannonball reaches the dilapidated Princess Bar as per the Professor's directive to find Wolverine. Confronted by local delinquents eager to rob him, Sam is poised to deploy his mutant abilities in self-defense. However, Tiger intervenes, armed with Tommy guns, frightening off the would-be assailants. He thanks Tiger, but also points out that he was pretty capable of handling himself. Discovering that she's a close friend of Wolverine, she consents to guide Sam to Logan's whereabouts. She notes Sam's unfamiliarity with Logan's past and realizes he's newly joined the X-Men. In Egypt, as Logan is guided towards the Citadel, his heightened senses alert him to the presence of a trap set at the front gates by unknown adversaries. Opting for a solitary approach, he decides to navigate through the rear entrance covertly. Logan sternly warns Jamil against triggering any alarms, emphasizing that consequences await him if the boy betrays him. Meanwhile, in Madripoor, Tiger leads Sam to the warp chamber Logan used. Upon opening the door, they discover its continued activation. Before Sam ventures through, Tiger shares a kiss with him and instructs him to convey it to Logan on her behalf. The rear entrance to the Citadel is laden with security nets and traps, all of which Logan skillfully detects and maneuvers past. His progress halts as a huge ship lands, disgorging the Dark Riders who proceed to herd numerous captured Egyptians for a sinister agenda. Suppressing a growl that threatens to betray his presence, Logan conceals himself in the sand, evading detection. As Wolverine stealthily infiltrates the sprawling Citadel, Cannonball emerges through the warp chamber. Spotting Wolverine's footprints, Sam swiftly changes into his costume, propelling himself after Logan. Within the Citadel's confines, Wolverine encounters Dirtnap, who remains in his rat form. In pursuit of his recent sparring companion, Logan unwittingly walks into the line of fire, facing the barrel of Genesis' blaster. It's then revealed Genesis is in fact Cable's son from the future and heir of the apocalypse. A single blast from Genesis incapacitates Logan, and his Dark Riders carry him into the laboratory. Inside, Wolverine is confined to a biotube as Genesis prepares to attempt to reunite the adamantium extracted from Cyber's body with Wolverine's skeleton. Once again, looks like it's all over for Wolverine, as he's tied up as metallic tubes descend from the biochamber like parasites in search of their host. Of bonds forged and forced, 100. Wolverine is helpless as Genesis begins the process of reconnecting the adamantium to the clawed mutant skeleton. Meanwhile, Cannonball and Zoe Culloden manage to infiltrate Genesis' Citadel. They eavesdrop on Genesis detailing his scheme to transform Logan into the embodiment of death, a crucial member in a revamped version of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Genesis also reveals a sinister plan involving millions of captured Egyptians, placed in unique sarcophagi, designed to channel their life forces into a body believed to be that of Apocalypse. The ultimate goal is to resurrect their master using the combined life forces of the captives. Genesis commands his Dark Riders to initiate the adamantium bonding and mind wipe procedure, willing to go to great lengths for a successful outcome. As Cannonball endeavors to launch a counterattack, Zoe restrains him, emphasizing that it's not the right time to intervene. Despite Wolverine's healing factor resisting the bonding and causing him intense pain, Genesis and his cohorts persist in their efforts. Unable to bear his friend's suffering any longer, Cannonball disregards Zoe's advice and confronts the situation head-on, prompting Zoe to teleport away. With the bonding process gaining ground, Cannonball emerges from concealment, assaulting Genesis and the Dark Riders while smashing some of their equipment in the process. Although he catches them off guard initially, the Dark Riders swiftly overpower Cannonball, piling onto him and subjecting him to a brutal beating. Yet, the systems sustain such severe damage that Logan starts to resist as Life Force struggles to regain control. Unfortunately, it proves too late, and the holding tanks rupture, unleashing a shower of adamantium shrapnel that claims the lives of both Hurricane and Life Force. Miraculously, Wolverine survives unscathed. When Genesis attempts to capture Logan, Cannonball rises, forcefully blasting them away, emphasizing the urgent need to prevent Apocalypse's resurrection. Hurtling into the next room, Cannonball succumbs to unconsciousness from the relentless beating, crashing among the numerous sarcophagi. In a distant mountaintop setting, Elektra receives guidance from her mentor, Stick, who instructs her to identify a wayward warrior who has deviated from the right path. After undergoing some rigorous training and discipline under Stick's guidance, Elektra hones her senses and successfully detects the lost warrior, acknowledging that he has indeed strayed from the intended path. Back in Egypt, Sam regains consciousness only to discover that Logan is missing. Frantically calling out for him, he's ambushed by Spine, but Wolverine emerges from the shadows to swiftly eliminate the lone Dark Rider. Proceeding with deadly efficiency, Wolverine kills the remaining Dark Riders one by one. First Deadbolt, then Gauntlet. Witnessing Gauntlet's demise, Dirtnap promptly retreats wisely from the unfolding carnage. Simultaneously, Genesis takes Sam hostage, intending to relocate him to a safer place within the creche of Apocalypse. However, upon their arrival, Logan reveals himself, and Sam points out that Genesis may not live to witness Apocalypse's vision of survival of the fittest. The experiments conducted by Genesis have remarkably accelerated Wolverine's evolution into a more feral state, prompting him to attack Genesis with primal savagery. Amidst Logan's ferocious assault on Genesis, Cannonball rushes to the creche and opens it, only to find it empty. This revelation leaves him questioning whether Apocalypse was ever present in the creche to begin with. Genesis, in his last moments, ponders Logan is really the best there is at what he does. As Sam turns to Logan, calling his name, all he encounters is the lifeless body of Genesis. Emerging from the shadows, Logan instructs Sam to apologize to Cable for the unfortunate necessity of killing his son, emphasizing the lack of alternative options. When Sam inquires if Logan will return to the mansion with him, the response is met with a heavy silence. Sam grasps the realization that they've lost Logan in more ways than one. Meanwhile, at Stick's covert abode, Elektra comprehends that her mission entails tracking down Logan and guiding him back onto the right path through training. Back on the battlefield, 101. As the X-Men engage in a fierce battle against Ozymandias' stone constructs, Cyclops finds himself thrown into a deep pit surrounded by an obelisk adorned with engravings foretelling the future. Meanwhile, Ozymandias seizes Wolverine and prepares to hurl him into the pit, but the feral mutant retaliates by stabbing the stone adversary with his claws and leaping after the falling Cyclops. With Ozymandias generating intense psychic interference, incapacitating Phoenix, Logan appears to be the sole hope for rescuing Cyclops. As Scott descends into the pit, he attempts to soften his fall with an optic blast, but the efforts prove futile. On the surface, Jean, Cannonball, and Iceman find themselves encircled by Ozymandias and the remaining stone lookalikes of Magneto, Hurricane, and Wolverine. Meanwhile, as Cyclops plummets, he collides with the pit's wall, knocking himself unconscious. Wolverine swiftly descends to catch up with Cyclops, guiding them toward the wall and using his own body as a shield to minimize further injuries. Logan's face is revealed after the failed adamantium bonding, and I guess the writers forgot to draw in his nose. With a lick to Scott's face, Logan successfully revives him. Upon glancing at the obelisk, Cyclops is astonished to see a carving depicting Professor Xavier from the early days of the X-Men. This revelation prompts Cyclops to ponder how long Ozymandias has been chronicling the history of mutants on Earth. Before losing consciousness once more, Wolverine starts the ascent, carrying Cyclops along the way. Hoisting Scott upward, they inadvertently draw the attention of the sculptures, making them vulnerable targets. The rest of the X-Men redirect their focus to protect their comrades, but the sculptures overwhelm them. In the midst of the struggle, Elektra makes a stealthy entrance and swiftly and effortlessly stabs two statues, sending them tumbling over the edge. Ozymandias responds by hurling rocks indiscriminately, burying Jean under a pile. As Cyclops attempts to reach her, jagged rocks are sent hurling toward him. Wolverine intervenes, positioning himself to shield his fellow X-Man from the sharp projectiles. Seizing the opportunity, Cyclops unleashes a powerful optic blast, shattering the stone man into pieces. The castle's collapse begins, prompting Wolverine to assist his fellow X-Men in regrouping and escaping. Despite Jean's telekinetic efforts to hold Ozymandias' picture castle together, it crumbles to bits. Once they reach safety, the X-Men check on Cyclops' well-being. Cyclops then shares that he witnessed something significant in the pit, pondering its implications on their future. Concerned about Wolverine's behavior, unaware that he's detected Elektra nearby, the group decides to depart. Wolverine receives assistance from his longtime teammate Cyclops as they leave the scene. Elektra enters 102. Wolverine is going out of the school for the night. While making a discreet exit from the Xavier Institute and catching a ride to New York City, Elektra reflects on a pivotal moment from her childhood. Set in the backdrop of the current unfolding events, the narrative revolves around Stavros, who's the gardener employed by Elektra's father, whom she discovers was a World War II mercenary responsible for numerous killings. Through his own experiences with the horrors of war, Stavros undergoes a transformation, realizing the value of life. He imparts difficult lessons to Elektra, revealing that he came to work for the Nachios family when a mother recruited him while being held at gunpoint. When two assassins target her, Stavros eliminates the older one. However, it's Elektra who persuades him to spare the younger assassin, leading him to realize his mistakes and his misguided past. This younger assassin then dedicates his life to working alongside Stavros, learning from his newfound wisdom. While the narrative continues, a young mother lovingly tucks her eldest son into bed and bids him goodnight before heading out for a leisurely evening stroll with her baby. The curious young boy awakens and discreetly leaves the house. At the same time, Wolverine finds himself near a blind homeless man requesting spare change. Intrigued, Logan takes a seat across the street to observe. When the boy's mother approaches, she mistakenly hands Logan a nickel, thinking he's just another panhandler. This gesture leaves Logan bewildered. Meanwhile, the boy rendezvous with a friend who happens to be a drug dealer. After completing some transactions, they find themselves in a shootout with a rival dealer. In the chaos, the rival appears to be fatally shot, inadvertently causing harm to innocent bystanders, including the blind old man. Witnessing this tragedy, Wolverine goes into a furious rage, prompting him to pursue the two attackers. Wolverine swiftly eliminates the older gunman. However, as he turns to leave, the younger boy shoots him in the arm. Logan chases after the fleeing kid into a subway station. In a precarious turn of events, the boy accidentally falls onto the tracks while attempting to shoot Logan again. In the process, a medallion is dislodged, emitting a scent that Wolverine recognizes. Leaping onto the tracks, Logan rescues the boy from an approaching train, and in the chaos, the boy's gun is lost. Once they're back on the surface, Logan takes a moment to closely sniff the medallion and identifies it as belonging to the boy's mother. Logan reveals that the boy's mother was caught in the crossfire but narrowly escaped being shot. As Wolverine succumbs to unconsciousness due to his gunshot wound, the boy initially contemplates fleeing. However, his guilty conscience compels him to turn back and assist Logan in getting back on his feet. Vulnerable to an assault, the boy becomes a target for the rival drug dealer, who managed to survive the earlier attack because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Just as the dealer is about to shoot, he's unexpectedly struck in the back by a sai thrown by Elektra, who was chosen to make her presence known to Wolverine. Witnessing that Logan has someone caring for him, the boy hurries over to his mother, now engaged in conversation with the police. However, before he leaves, Logan tosses the nickel back to the boy, the same one his mother had given him earlier in the evening. Wolverine's on TV, 102.5. In the wilderness, Wolverine is being trained by his new mentor Elektra in order to regain his humanity. But trouble can't be far enough away when both the clawed mutant and the woman without fear are together. Wolverine is attacked and abducted by Spiral and a team of werewolves, posing as Logan's close friends from the X-Men. When Wolverine gets up close to one of the werewolves posing as Jean and sniffs her, he attacks and rips open her skin suit, revealing her true self. She's impressed Wolverine saw through her disguise, and the rest of the werewolves attack, overpowering Logan. They teleport him back to the TV-obsessed dimension of Mojo World as a shocked Elektra looks on. Longshot and Dazzler, now living on Mojo World, are horrified to see the airwaves come alive again, as they defeated Mojo to create an entertainment-free society. Mojo 2 appears on screen, announcing a new fall lineup, clarifying that the fall he refers to is the fall of the entertainment-free regime that Longshot has so far led. While the duo try to control the damage by broadcasting their message urging the masses to not tune in, Dazzler realizes it's in vain, as the Nielsenometer, a ratings detector, detects Mojo 2's ratings have skyrocketed, as Wolverine is forced to fight a legion of werewolves disguised as the Thing, Hulk, and Deadpool. Longshot and Dazzler, accompanied by the X-Babies, find him, but rather than join the fight, which would increase ratings, they decide to sit and wait. As he's getting pummeled by the werewolves, viewers grow bored of the one-sided fight and tune out. Looks like the plan is working as the ratings go down. Dazzler asks him to stop the little retaliating, and he makes up his mind to listen to her. Once no one's watching, Longshot, Dazzler, and the X-Babies join the fight and defeat the werewolves. Mojo 2 instructs the werewolves to get back up and fight and promises he'll be back. He's soon cancelled by Dazzler as the X-Babies are excited to have fought alongside Wolverine. They then teleport Wolverine back to Earth, where he tells Elektra that he won because he lost. She doesn't understand what he means, and he says he doesn't either. As comic relief, we also see the ex-baby Wolvie getting ready for Halloween. He tries on multiple suits, all of which are strongly rejected by Psyche, the ex-baby version of Cyclops. He even tries on a Feral Wolverine face mask with a tattered suit. He finally finds one that Cyclops likes, which turns out to be an adult Wolverine, but Cyc doesn't understand what he's supposed to be. Elektra Sensei 103. Trained by Elektra to reclaim his warrior instincts, Wolverine faces his inaugural test, scaling the World Trade Center solely with his bare hands. Upon reaching the summit, Elektra queries his identity. Identifying himself as Wolverine, she remarks on the animalistic connotation of the name and questions whether the man or the animal ascended the building. Caught off guard, Wolverine fails to respond promptly, prompting Elektra to swiftly strike him, emphasizing that a lapse in vigilance is a trait of a man, not an animal. They step into a solitary chamber that Elektra has designated as their training dojo. She hangs a scroll bearing 2 Chinese ideograms on the wall. Logan identifies them as symbolizing forest and wind, yet senses a missing piece, a familiarity from a prior encounter. Logan engages in combat training, and meditation follows. Presenting a riddle, she displays a samurai sword, likening it to Logan, Naked Fury, a potent force when harnessed skillfully. Initiating the final examination, she deceives him into entering a walk-in freezer, promptly sealing him inside as he succumbs to his animalistic rage. Pounding on the door, Elektra empathizes. Memories of her love lost with Matt Murdock flood back, along with her stint in the chase and the downfall resulting from her attempts to infiltrate the Hand. Meanwhile, Logan shifts from frenzied pounding to contemplation, reflecting on the enigmatic challenges posed to him. Ingeniously, he devises a solution. Utilizing his claws, Wolverine cuts his way out of the freezer, reclaiming the sword in the process. As he walks past the incomplete scroll, Logan's memory is jogged, and he recalls the absent element. The mountain, a lesson imparted by his old sensei Logan years ago. Meeting Elektra outside, he shares his realization, earning her approval. She inquires if he's deciphered the sword's riddle. The ensuing combat unfolds, and as she disarms him of his sword, Wolverine deploys his claws. When accused of behaving like an animal, he retracts the claws and attempts to regain the sword. However, recognizing the underlying lesson, Logan chooses to prevail in the battle using only his bare hands. As the battle concludes, Elektra reinforces the lesson for him. Sheathing the sword is more challenging than drawing it, and at times, moving a mountain proves easier than compelling someone to change their ways. Getting help from Gateway 104. Following their confrontation with Onslaught, Wolverine receives orders from Jean and Scott to visit Charles Xavier's school for gifted youngsters in Massachusetts. The mission? To locate Gateway, a silent mutant, in the hope that he could provide insight into the origins of Onslaught. Upon Logan's initial confrontation with Gateway, the Australian mutant opens a time-space portal, forcing Wolverine to relive the tragic day of his lover Mariko Yoshida's death. Overwhelmed by grief, Wolverine staggered off the school roof, narrowly avoiding a painful fall to the ground. Fortunately, Elektra intervened just in time, grabbing him and pulling him through one of the windows into the safety of the school. Encountering Wolverine unexpectedly, she's questioned about her presence, having followed him from Salem Center. She asserts that she's been tasked with bringing Logan back to the correct path and insists on trailing him until those matters are resolved. Logan welcomes her to join him and suggests they attempt to engage Gateway. However, their attempts to seek Gateway's assistance prove futile until she draws a parallel between him and her stubborn master, Stick. At the mention of Stick's name, Gateway halts the spinning of his bull roarer, turning to them in astonishment. Attempting to inquire about Stick's connection, Gateway signals for her to remain silent, resuming the spinning of his bull roarer. This triggers a vision for Elektra, transporting her to the afterlife, where she's guided along the river Styx by death. Shockingly, she discovers her father suffering in the afterlife. Compelled to relive her resurrection by the Hand and grapple with feelings of unworthiness regarding Daredevil's love. Returning to reality, Elektra and Wolverine conclude that Gateway intended to reveal the most painful moments of their lives to prepare for the worst. Understanding the significance of this revelation, Wolverine once again requests Gateway to share his knowledge. This time, Gateway is more willing to help and teleports them into the main study of the school, where Wolverine implores him to disclose what he knows about Onslaught. Once again, Elektra and Wolverine are transported through time and space, landing at the pivotal moment when Magneto forcibly extracted the adamantium from Wolverine's bones. Constrained to observe the event in the astral plane, they witness Xavier utilizing his powers to erase Magneto's mind. However, in that critical moment, a malevolent essence within Magneto extends and contaminates Xavier with a growing darkness. The revelation that Charles had been tainted by Magneto's evil deeply disturbs Wolverine. They find themselves back in the present, and Gateway completes the spin of his bull roarer. Outside the school later, Logan broods and shoulders the blame for Onslaught's existence. He confesses to Elektra that if he hadn't succumbed to his feral instincts and attacked Magneto, provoking the Master of Magnetism to retaliate, Xavier wouldn't have had to take the drastic step of erasing Magneto's mind, leaving him susceptible to Magneto's dark side. Elektra suggests that armed with the knowledge they've acquired, they might have the potential to restore Xavier to his former self. Logan acknowledges the possibility, but expresses doubt that Charles could ever be the same again. Feeling parallel with himself, Logan senses he's forgotten what it means to be a man. Elektra reassures him, stating that he still is a man, and they share a comforting embrace on the ledge. The short end of the stick, 104. Wolverine realizes, while in a huge pool of water, that Magneto was the culprit. He infected old Charlie Xavier with the darkest part of himself that made the otherwise peaceful professor violent, turning him into Onslaught. It's now the responsibility of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and the Avengers to prevent the most powerful telepath on the planet from switching sides and turning into an evil mutant whose mission is to punish humans. Remind you of anyone? Wolverine decides to leave the heavy lifting to the people who can move objects with their minds and shoot lasers out of their eyes, and that he's better suited to limit the casualties on the ground. We soon realize that the huge pool of water he was in was a water cannon used by firefighters gathered at the scene of a burning building, and that he asked to be doused in water to help him save the people trapped inside. As the fire rages and a window breaks, one of the firefighters on the ground instructs his crewmate on the ladder to climb up as he notices a kid is stuck. The smoke makes it difficult for the elevated firefighter to see where the kid is, and he asks where the kid is stuck. As soon as the firefighter on the ground replies the kid is on the 6th floor, his crewmate realizes he can't reach and rescue the kid, as the rescue ladder, boom extension, won't reach. With the child crying out for his mother, the firefighter orders the safety net. A distraught mother calls out for her son, Sean, who's trapped and needs to be saved, and says she thought he was right behind her when they were running away from the fire. Her other little daughter points out that her brother went back to save Mr. Winky. Meanwhile, Wolverine is up there assessing the situation and inquiring how many are trapped and whether the firefighters can get the kid to jump into the net below. The firefighter tells him that the net is 2 blocks away and their resources are already stretched thin. Wolverine decides to rescue the kid himself, even though he's warned that the ladder doesn't reach. He takes a running start and leaps up, hoping he hasn't miscalculated. After barely reaching the broken window, he hoists himself up and tries to rescue the child. Little Sean runs away and hides, seeing Wolverine's beastly face, and he calmly explains that he needs Sean's help to find Mr. Winky. He enters the house, tracking Sean's scent, surprised that his heightened sense of smell works even with the immense amount of smoke he's surrounded by. Wolverine calls out to Sean, telling him that his mother is waiting for him. Sean's hiding under his bed as Wolverine finds him and extends his hand for the child to come out. Sean realizes Wolverine isn't a firefighter and tells him that his mother had instructed him not to talk to strangers. He also asks Wolverine why he's sporting a bandana mask. Wolverine tells Sean his mother was right, but he's wearing a mask not because he's an intruder, but a superhero, and that his mother had sent him to rescue Sean and Mr. Winky. Logan wants to know whether Mr. Winky is an old man, to which Sean calls him silly and replies Mr. Winky is his beloved teddy bear. Wolverine tells Sean Mr. Winky must be pretty special to him as he risked his own life and came back for him. When Sean replies in the affirmative, Wolverine, having established trust with him, says they better get out. With Sean on his back, Wolverine dashes for the broken window, only to be blocked by another fire breaking out that's taking down the entire floor. Sean's mother is worried as her son is still up there as the firefighters pull back and Wolverine tries to find another way out. He asks Sean for help in locating the fire stairs and makes a run for the hallway. Frantically looking for a way out, Sean is confused in the chaos and the smoke isn't making things easier. He expresses his fear that they're going to die, to which Wolverine replies they're superheroes. They can't die. When Sean retorts that he's not a superhero, Wolverine puts his bandana mask over Sean's face and says the mask makes its wearer a superhero. Through the raging fire, Wolverine hears a voice asking him to take another route. He thinks someone else is trapped and can't see the person clearly through the smoke. The old man offers Logan his walking stick, and Logan wonders aloud how he can see through the clouds of smoke. He leads them to the emergency exit stairs that are ablaze and informs Logan that it's the only way out. In order to protect Sean, Logan covers him up with his wet t-shirt. Logan promises to get the little boy out and asks him to take a deep breath through the wet cloth and hold it. He runs down through 6 flights of burning stairs, and the agony reminds him of the time he rescued the cyborg LCD from a burning warehouse in Venice, California. The old man tells Logan to pick up the pace, otherwise they'd both be burned to a crisp, and complains about the false claims about the stairs being fireproof. With only one more floor to go, Logan realizes he's on fire and urges Sean to hold on tight. In a blaze, Logan runs out of the building, letting Sean run into his mother's safe arms. While Sean's mother wants to thank Logan, the firefighters stop her as they don't want her to see how badly burned Wolverine is. The gathered crowd marvels at how Wolverine is still alive with huge blisters visible on his skin and his body still on fire, as Wolverine, fighting through the pain, reminds himself that even though he doesn't possess the power to lift objects with his mind or shoot lasers out of his eyes, what he does have is a mutant healing factor that can restore him to full health. However, he also wishes he had a built-in pain suppression factor to deal with the immense pain. As the firefighters call him a hero, Wolverine corrects them, saying that a hero is someone who does his job every day. Like the firefighters, he asks them to douse him again as he goes inside to save the old man with the walking stick, who showed Sean and him the way out. Sean calls out to Wolverine, telling him he can't be a hero without his mask, and returns the bandana to him. Wolverine thanks him and says he needs the mask so as not to get recognized by the bad guys. Sean asks Logan whether he's Captain America, while running back inside the building as Sean wonders who the superhero who saved him actually was. Back inside, Wolverine tries to track down the mysterious old man, telling him that the building will collapse very soon. Realizing that the man is on an upper level, he asks him to come down nice and easy, because he's not leaving without him. He leaps up, holding onto a railing, and climbs up the stairs to the roof. As soon as Logan reaches the landing, he's hit on the head with a stick. An agitated Logan closes his fists, producing his claws. Seeing this, the old man wants to know whether Logan wants to rescue him or dig his claws into him. Hearing this, Logan retracts his claws and tells the man he'll save him, even if by knocking him unconscious and dragging him out. Logan then grabs him by the collar and tells the old man he's getting saved whether he wants to or not. After a couple of batterings with the stick, during which the old man taunts Logan, making it clear that he knows who and what Logan is, Logan realizes that the old man is none other than Elektra's old master, Stick. As the two fight it out on the sole remaining wall of the building, Wolverine realizes why he encountered Stick. Logan thought Stick was dead, and Stick informs him that he's never let death stop him. Also, if he really were dead, he wouldn't be beating Logan with a bow staff. Logan fights back, acknowledging Stick may not be dead in the traditional sense of the term, but he sure isn't alive. Stick asks Logan whether the thought of fighting a ghost is stopping him from countering his attacks. Logan replies that he doesn't believe Stick is a ghost, but a being vibrating on another plane of existence. Stick calls Logan astute, but informs him that his existence is not what he's come to discuss with Logan. Wolverine says he knows what Stick has come to do, to finish what Elektra started. As Wolverine starts to fight back, he tells Stick that he knows his intentions of making Wolverine a man again, teaching him that there's no pride without humility, no bravery without fear, and no learning without ignorance. Stick, in typical fashion, mocks Wolverine, telling him he's no school teacher, and that he can't teach Wolverine how to be human or bring him back to his old self. All Elektra or Stick can do is assure Logan that he can revert back to controlling his animalistic tendencies only if he so wishes. Wolverine admits that he doesn't know how to reverse the change and that he's not in control. Magneto pulled the adamantium out of him, and he's not felt like himself since then. Stick points out that after Magneto pulled out the metal from his body, Logan gave up on himself. He let his fear get to him, and that weakened his willpower to keep the animal in him subdued. This willpower is the key to humanity, and it isn't a gift. Stick warns Logan that he must learn to control his animalistic tendencies in order to have a fighting chance against Onslaught. Wolverine points out the futility of Stick's speech if he dies in the fire. Stick tells Wolverine he'll live if he jumps in the direction in which Stick is pointing. Wolverine chooses to trust Stick and jumps off the building safely, landing on a fire ladder. As the crowd cheers on Wolverine, he's approached by the Human Torch, who informs him that the superheroes are gathering at 4 Freedoms Plaza to coordinate their plan of attack against Onslaught. Home is where the heart is. Wolverine and Elektra take a trek into the wilderness of the Canadian woods. As night falls and they set up camp, the duo are surrounded by a pack of wolves. Wolverine asks Elektra to stay calm and not do anything rash. Elektra argues that it's a tactical mistake to allow the wolves to surround them and that they must go on the offensive. Before she can finish her thought, Wolverine again warns her against making any moves on the wolves, even if she feels like she doesn't have a choice. He tells her that the forest is his turf and she just needs to say yes and heed to his warnings of not engaging the wild animals. Wolverine lets out a howl and then growls as the wolves respond. They pounce on Logan, tackling him, and start licking his face. He loves the attention and asks them to take it easy. Realizing they're hungry, he offers them meat from his backpack and asks them to fill up. Seeing this, Elektra comments that the animal inside Logan still hasn't been cast out completely, to which Logan replies, "Not quite." Elektra wonders that Logan's human side appears to be in charge, but what could also be his beastly side playing tricks. As they're hiking up a trail, She complains that Logan gave all of their food to the wolves, and the nearest store to stock up is 100 miles away. Logan assures her they don't need a convenience store, and the place they're headed to has a salt lick, where deer often come and streams full of fish. While he gets down into a river, he expertly uses his claws to catch fish while further explaining that the destination has squirrels and raccoons in the trees, quail and pheasants in the shrubbery, huckleberries, purslane, chicory, dandelions, morels, and last but not least, as Jules Gibbons called them, wild hickory nuts. With all this naturally available, he asks Elektra what she needs a store for. As they head to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, Logan enjoys the smell of mountain laurel and says that during the old sweet days, they had sassafras, mint, and juniper on the shadowy side of the cabin. Elektra recognizes the cabin as the home of Logan and Silver Fox. Wolverine takes Elektra out back to show her where his deceased lover is buried and notices some overgrowth. He gets down to chopping off some of the overgrowth to reveal the headstone that even has Logan's name. He clarifies that the reason for using the cabin door as the unconventional gravestone marker was because it was carved with both his and Silver Fox's names. Elektra asks whether Wolverine would also like to be buried there after his death, to which he replies that he's already asked Nick Fury and John Wraith to lay him to rest there. Logan recalls the time spent with Silver Fox in that cabin. It was their home, and they were happy. He loved her since their childhood, and told her what they had would last forever. Silver Fox, well-intentioned, laughed at that and told Logan nothing lasts forever and everything has its time. Wolverine, uncharacteristically, opens up about how he thought he could never get over Silver Fox, but the whole of living life is getting back up when life knocks us down and moving on. He admits to having romantic love interests after Silver Fox and that he's always been unlucky in love. To honor Mariko, he burns incense in an old temple near Tokyo, and he still has a soft spot for Heather and Jean, although he knows he doesn't have a future with them. Logan kneels to pay his last respects as he places a bunch of flowers on Silver Fox's grave and tells Elektra that he'd promised to pay her a visit every spring with the blooming wildflowers and the welcoming smell of the mountain laurel. He shamefully admits he was late this year as he wasn't quite feeling at one with himself. Getting up, Wolverine says that he isn't afraid of either his human or animalistic side, nor is he afraid to love again. Wise words from Wolverine are spoken as he says fear brings us closer to death, and he, for one, isn't ready to embrace death yet. After paying his respects, Logan and Elektra set out on her part of the expedition. Elektra and Logan are now on a plane headed to Greece. As Logan takes a much-needed nap, Elektra wonders about her odd pair-up with Logan. On the one hand, we have the ex-assassin of the evil organization called the Hand, who was once regarded as one of the deadliest people alive and has been given a second chance after her close brush with death. While on the other, we have an X-Man, guardian of a dream who only a few believe is achievable, and one of the unfortunate mutants who has to fight his own mutation to retain his humanity. While Elektra admits he's no Adonis and makes comments about his height, she also acknowledges he's honest and noble, two characteristics that she found only in one other man, Daredevil, aka Matt Murdock, her previous love interest. She wonders whether the reason she's taking Logan home is because she's starting to have the same romantic feelings for him. Unsure, she puts her hand over Logan's as they land. As they arrive at the Nachios home, Elektra makes the formal introductions, acquainting him with her waitstaff, Gardener Stavros and his associate Theo, the cook, and Athos, all of whom refer to Elektra as Little One. Athos doesn't regard himself worthy of keeping his place at the Nachios home, as he shamefully falls at Elektra's feet, admitting his failure in carrying out the duty of protecting her father. Elektra calmly eases him up, telling him it wasn't his fault, as there were 6 men with guns who shot him as soon as they entered. Athos lost his leg and eye while trying to protect her father, and Elektra assures him that he'll have a place in her house for as long as she lives. He kisses her hands, thanking her for her kindness. Elektra gives him a big hug, telling him there's no need for such formalities, as she considers everyone who lives in that house family. Logan is also welcomed with open arms as the cook has prepared Elektra's favorite dishes, pasticcio and horikati. Stavros tells them it's time to celebrate without any regrets or restrictions. He leads them to the terrace where the dinner table is set. Stavros offers her olives from the same sapling she planted a long time ago, and asks her whether she remembers the time she accidentally killed a sapling with a hoe, and Stavros helped her plant another one. She confirms that she remembers it clearly, and adds that she first met Theo in that very olive grove. Theo regrets his past self as he thought he could change the world by being an assassin. Elektra comforts him, placing a hand on his and telling him that she knew he had a good heart, even though she was a child herself. The conversation then turns to Logan as they realize he must be feeling left out. Stavros seems fascinated by Logan's Canadian heritage and recalls his days as a soldier during World War II. He remembers the British sending a Canadian corporal to teach Stavros and the others how to kill the Nazis with explosives and a dagger. Stavros clarifies that the Canadian was taller and better looking than Logan. On one terrible day, Stavros received the news that his mother was murdered by the SS, and he was primed for revenge on Colonel Slage, who gave the order. As he was leaving, armed with his rifle, the Canadian man stopped him, telling him that gunning down the German officer would be counterproductive, as they'd then have to face the entirety of the Waffen SS regiment. He offered Stavros a dagger and told him to finish the job quietly like he was taught, and offered him backup. Ready for revenge, the two crept into the compound but didn't find Slage, as he'd been transferred out already. Nevertheless, the duo made short work of the others and Stavros still has the dagger. Logan asks for the corporal's name, to which Stavros replies they just called him Canada. Elektra is shocked by how open Stavros was about his war days, commenting that his little recount to Logan was the most she heard him talk about his days in the military, and that she's only overheard a little more from the cook and Athos. Stavros tells her he needed to bring up the topic of revenge, as they've been monitoring the 6 people who were responsible for Elektra's father's death. 2 of them, who were ready to appear as witnesses against their employer, were found floating in the harbor, victims of gang violence. 1 died of tuberculosis while being imprisoned, and another was murdered in the prison yard. 2 of the remaining men were let out on parole, and 1 of them died of a drug overdose. The last remaining one, Sawyer, is still alive, and Stavros knows where he is. Hearing this, Elektra says that she appreciates what Stavros has done, as that's what's expected by her family. It's their old way of doing things. She, however, is done with the old ways of seeking vengeance and the darkness it brings. Elektra asks Stavros to remember the time when she was 9, and he held her mother's gun to Theo's head in the olive grove, and Elektra asked him to spare his life. Now, Theo, alive and well, is working with Stavros and is treated like his own son. She also adds that they ate olives from the tree they planted in place of the one that died. Elektra reminds him that the fruits of mercy are indeed sweet, and that the 6 assassins did get what they deserved. Elektra asks them to let Sawyer go and goes on to help the cook with dessert. Stavros comments that Elektra's forgiveness is rare, to which Wolverine replies she's a force to be reckoned with. Stavros warns Wolverine that he better not break her heart or hurt her, and Wolverine walks away, stating that he's not interested in her romantically. Later that night, Stavros, along with Theo and Athos, go down to the wine cellar where they've kept Sawyer hostage and tied up. Sawyer begs for mercy as Stavros pulls out his dagger and cuts Sawyer loose. Athos regrets this action and says they'll be done for once Sawyer will run to the cops. Stavros retorts, saying he can't disobey Elektra's wishes. Unfortunately, Sawyer runs into Wolverine, and there couldn't be a worse person to stop and ask for help to call the cops. Wolverine pins Sawyer to the wall, extracts his claws, and warns the man to not go to the police, otherwise he'll be hunted down like a dog. Sawyer complies, running away into the night. Hearing the commotion, Elektra wakes up, asking who the man was. Logan tells her it was just some night runner, and Elektra asks about the whereabouts of Stavros. He replies, guessing that Stavros is probably curled up with a book in the study, to which Elektra says that's highly unlikely because Stavros has been working the grove since he was 6 and had never learned how to read. Back at the cellar, Stavros is stacking away the dagger in its sheath that bears the name Corporal Logan. Tokyo Tales 107. Wolverine is back in Japan to pay a visit to his adopted daughter Amiko, Mariko's foster daughter, and her guardian Yukio. Using an image inducer to make himself look non-feral and less menacing, so as not to frighten Amiko, Logan stops by the apartment the girl lives in with Yukio with a brand new bike. However, he senses 2 heartbeats, controlled breathing as if through masks, and smells clove oil. Wolverine realizes something is wrong and smashes through the door to find ninjas of the hand, ransacking the apartment, and no sign of Amiko or Yukio. When he demands to know where the little girl and Yukio are, they pull out their weapons and a fight breaks out. Wolverine engages, promising them a world of pain if they continue to fight. Wolverine's forced to slay the ninjas, and their bodies, as usual, dissolve. 2 others come to attack, and Logan makes short work of them as well. Before one of the ninjas breathes his last, he speaks into his transmitter, confirming the presence of Logan. This turns out to be a setup, as the Japanese military surround the building, seeking to arrest Wolverine and question him about the deaths of Mariko and Amiko. As Wolverine considers what to do, while looking at a family portrait of himself, Mariko and Amiko, he thinks about how the Silver Samurai hasn't been able to live up to his promise to keep an eye on Yukio and Amiko after giving him the honor sword. Just then, the military opens fire, and Wolverine just barely avoids getting shot by a sniper. Getting back up and realizing there's no back door or fire escape, he smashes into the next apartment, and to his surprise, he finds the occupants have a motorcycle inside. He borrows it, promising to bring it back, granted he lives until then, to make his escape, and manages to get away from the military. The military, sensible enough to avoid property damage or civilian casualties, stop firing. Meanwhile, on a movie set, the latest Kojiro movie is being filmed. After the director calls cut, Akatora, the actor who portrays Kojiro wearing the suit, is congratulated for his performance. He thanks the crew and his director, remarking that computer-generated images and animation lack soul and can never replace the human touch of a real artist. Taking a break, he gets a call and learns that Wolverine has managed to escape the trap that was set for him. However, he still remains unaware about where Yukio and Amiko have been taken. Elsewhere in Tokyo, Wolverine rides into a Yakuza gambling den. After they point their weapons at him, he asks them to ease up and says he's neither a cop nor a raider from another clan, but just another outlaw demanding sanctuary from the military. They charge at him after saying sanctuary is only provided to brothers of the Yakuza and attack him. When a number of their enforcers come at him with samurai swords, he cuts them down with his claws, saying he doesn't show mercy to men who would swing their swords at someone they think is unarmed. Soon he finds himself at gunpoint. Logan stands down and explains that he was formally adopted into the Yoshida clan by betrothal to Mariko Yoshida, and seeks sanctuary once again as he identifies himself as the former guardian of the Honor Sword. He apologizes for his rude entrance but needs a place to hide. This time, he's welcomed by their leader, a woman named Shirohana, or the Pale Flower, who controls all the gambling activities in the district. She informs Logan that she can't provide him sanctuary until his credentials are verified, but can declare a ceasefire until the matter is cleared. In the meantime, she invites him to enjoy a meal as there's no reason for Wolverine to remain hungry or thirsty. Meanwhile, out in Tokyo Bay, it turns out that the actor Akatora is a member of the Hand, and while he has Yukio chained up in the basement of the movie set where she's being tortured into submission, he's having Amiko slowly brainwashed by his assistants, who give her whatever she wants. So much so that she started referring to him as Uncle, telling them to increase her mental conditioning. He instructs his minions to double-lock the blast door and key it into the main security system. His spies call him with the latest findings and report that Wolverine has been tracked. He's currently taking refuge in the gambling hall of Shirohana, the Pale Flower, and they're calling to confirm whether a team should be sent to bring him in. He decides to have his men pay the noodle vendor for the tip. While back at the hall of the Double Jade clan, Pale Flower feeds Wolverine a meal and asks him how he became a fugitive. He tells her how Mariko died and that he vowed to raise Amiko after her mother's death. When his story's finished, Shirohana admits she finds him admirable, but is also bound by certain obligations. She recounts the story of how a person named Mr. Patch, one of Logan's many aliases, assisted by a traitorous assassin called Raiko, brought about the downfall of her clan, the Dai Kumo. Pale Flower reveals she's Daikomo's daughter, and after the extermination of her clan, she had to leave Osaka and start anew in Tokyo, assuming the identity of Shirohana. She goes on to say that she hopes Logan is enjoying his fish, as he was served blowfish, and informs him that there's no antidote for the toxic fish. Logan collapses while trying to get the toxin out of his system. As things look bleak for the clawed mutant, Wolverine gets back up smartly, asking for dessert, much to the surprise of Shirohana and her minions. While her lackeys express their disbelief, stating that Logan had enough poison to kill 20 men, Wolverine boasts of his healing factor and how easily it dealt with the poison. Before Shirohana and her men can do anything more to deal with Logan, the military suddenly smashes through the wall with a caterpillar truck, and guns ablaze seeking to take out Logan and get rid of the gangsters, two birds with one stone. As she pulls an Uzi gun out to defend herself, Pale Flower blames Logan for bringing destruction down on her house once again. Wolverine, while drinking, comments that it was retribution for trying to kill him. It's all in the hands. 108. As Wolverine and Pale Flower are locked up in the Shinjuku police station, Wolverine tells the guards to run as things are gonna turn awry pretty soon. He's pushed away from the bars by the guards who tell him that he's in no position to give them orders. Pale Flower, from the cell opposite, expresses her disappointment in Logan's unwillingness to put up a fight and asks him why he let himself be captured so easily. Logan answers that he knows the Hand had a hand in his arrest. See what I did there? As part of whatever plans they have for Yukio and Amiko. By letting himself be captured, he's now one step ahead and can track down the person or people who kidnapped Yukio and Amiko. Shirohana calls him an imbecile for thinking the Hand will show up in a prison. Wolverine says he's been waiting for them for a while now, and just then, a man appearing to be a priest enters the cell block to offer prayers for Wolverine. However, he is in reality a Hand warrior known as the Iron Monk. With his iron prayer beads, he knocks out the soldiers and rips the door open to Logan's cell. He explains that he's come to kill the mutant and that nothing man-made can kill him. Logan's willing to try, but his claws don't do the trick this time. So he tries using the cell bars. Pale Flower tries using a cinder block to knock him out, but that fails too as she's swatted away like a fly with the iron beads. As Logan and Pale Flower seem to be running out of weapons, a mysterious man emerges from the trapdoor. Not much for a security prison, looking for Logan. Logan answers him, confirming his identity, and as the fight goes on, the man asks probing questions, unbothered by the fact that Logan is hurt. Logan appreciates the sentiment, but points out that it's no time to be making introductions. The man hands him the honor sword and tells Logan that the Silver Samurai is detained unavoidably, but is quite aware and ashamed at failing at his duties towards his family. This time, before Iron Monk finishes his sentence boasting his capability of not being slain by mortal hand or blade, Wolverine drives the sword through his stomach, pointing out that the sword was forged out of meteorite iron by a demon. After the Iron Monk is slain, he dissolves, as is the case with all the assassins of the hand. Wolverine hands the sword back to the man, who then introduces himself as Yohei. Wolverine then asks Yohei whether they can escape from the trapdoor he came from. Along the way, Yohei explains that he's just a button man for the Yoshida clan, and that his job was pretty much over after he handed over the sword to Logan. He also asks whether Logan knows who the unconscious woman on his shoulders is. When Logan confirms in the affirmative, he also tells Yohei that she tried to kill him, but gained some favor with him when she attacked the Iron Monk. Meanwhile, in the middle of Tokyo Bay, Amiko's brainwashing is in full swing as Akatora's minions, Emi and Sumi, are playing with her. When Amiko asks to see Yukio, the two women begin to convince her that Yukio has run away with Logan to Paris and that they don't care about her anymore. The little girl, however, isn't so quick to believe them, as Yukio told Amiko she loves her, and Logan saved her from suffering the same fate as her foster mother. They then ask Amiko how that's helped her, since she still had to live in that dingy flat with Yukio and didn't have access to the treats, toys and beautiful clothes that she's now getting. Moreover, the icing on the cake is, Amiko also has Sumi and Emi to play with her all day long. Sumi then goes down to the dungeon where Yukio has been kept and tortured since her capture for more conditioning of her own. When Sumi informs her of Amiko's resistance and that they'd have to resort to more archaic means to get her to comply, Yukio calls them sick and warns Sumi of what will happen to them when her restraints are off, and that she pities their situation when Logan finally finds them and sees what they've been doing to his ward. Emi leaves Amiko to have some soda and cake and tells her that when she returns they'd play a game. She then goes to report to Akatora about the progress she's having on brainwashing Amiko. She tells him that Amilo is ready for the next stage of indoctrination, and Akatora shuts her down as he's talking to the noodle vendor. News from the noodle vendor is grim, as Akatora is informed about the escape of Pale Flower and Logan. He's then warned by the noodle vendor to assume that Logan is coming after him and to take the necessary steps by locking his doors and windows. Back on the docks, Wolverine, Pale Flower and Yohei surface. Yohei informs Logan that his job is done and hands him the honor sword. Yohei refuses Logan's offer to help him make it back to the Yoshida clan and tells Logan that he can handle himself just fine. They then find themselves up against members of the Blue Monkey Gang, who fully intend to attack them for encroaching on their turf. Wolverine sets down Shirahana to deal with the gang, but to his surprise, he sees that Yohei has effortlessly already dealt with their attackers with one strike. Pale Flower, now conscious, explains that Yohei is really the Yoshida clan's enforcer and that he pretends to be lazy, stupid and harmless to trick his enemies. Hearing this, Yohei says that he's not the only one pretending, as she must be hiding something to know so much about Yohei. Meanwhile, in the Shinjuku district, Sumi and Emi go to meet the noodle vendor who's been selling information to other parties, including Akatora's enemies. One such agent was an American by the name of Daryl Smith, who identifies himself as an agent of the NSA but is in reality a part of the Special Mutant Task Force. The noodle vendor admits his mistake, saying the American disappeared without a trace and that he never should have trusted him. He promises never to sell him information ever again. The two women ensure that happens as they pull out their knives and are ready to eliminate him. Back at the docks, Yohei lights a cigarette, informing Pale Flower that not only is she what she appears to be, a crime boss, but she's also something that she's not aware of yet. When Shirohana asks what he means, Yohei reveals she's a mutant, much to her and Logan's surprise. Yohei says that he's been keeping tabs on the noodle vendor, who he initially thought was just an informant of the hand, but he proved to be a double-crosser, snitching and selling information about everyone to everybody else. What especially caught Yohei's interest was the amount of information he was passing on about Pale Flower, not to the hand, but to the American agent who was involved with the Special Mutant Task Force. Shirahana still doesn't believe him, and wonders whether that was the reason she was sent off to the boarding school in Switzerland by her father. Logan finally says that he finds this new information interesting, but he has to get back on track to find his former ward, Amiko. Yohei asks him why he's taking such a risk fighting against the hand. Logan informs Yohei that Amiko isn't related to him by blood or family, but he was there when her mother died and had promised the kid he would always protect her. He admits to having sometimes failed to deliver on that promise, but if he doesn't keep his word, he's no better than an animal. Hearing this, Yohei chooses to accompany Logan on his mission. When Logan asks why, Yohei simply says that he has duties toward the Yoshida clan and that Logan's engagement to Mariko, who was Yohei's boss and custodian of the honor sword, effectively makes him his elder brother, and that warrants loyalty. Moreover, it's not every day that an errand boy of a crime syndicate gets a chance to follow an honorable man through the gates of Hades. Logan scoffs at Yohei's comparison of the hand to the gates of Hades. Pale Flower chooses to accompany Logan as well, since she feels he's underestimating the hand and that he'll need all the help he can get. A suspicious Logan plainly tells her she tried to poison him, to which she clarifies that while she did try to kill him to avenge her father, her familial obligations were over by her earnest attempt, although she failed at it. Any remaining obligation was nullified when Logan didn't leave her back at the prison. Logan agrees and asks what their first step should be and where they should go to start looking for Emiko. Yohei informs him the noodle vendor is a good place to start. Back at the movie studio on Tokyo Bay, Sumi and Emi return, battered up, and offer their apologies to their leader for their failure to kill the noodle vendor, who was adept at martial arts. They're ready to pay for their inadequacy. Akatora is furious at them and says he'd have their heads stuffed for pillows if they weren't a crucial part of his plans for Emiko's indoctrination. However, he does have another plan to finish what the two women started and recruits the cyber ninjas of the Death Touch cult to eliminate the noodle vendor, as well as Wolverine. Getting Noodles 109. Wolverine has tracked down the noodle vendor, an informant who can tell him where the Hand are holding Emiko and Yukio hostage. However, the Hand cyber ninjas of the Death Touch cult have reached the noodle vendor first and are having a go at him while Logan slurps on some noodles from his cart. After Wolverine helps him by killing them all, the noodle vendor attempts to attack him from behind when he's stopped by his allies Pale Flower and Yohei. Logan demands that the noodle vendor tell him where the Hand has taken Yukio and Emiko. While on Akatora's island, Emiko's brainwashing is still in full swing, carried out by Akatora's assistants, Emi and Sumi. What's seemingly a carousel ride is in fact a ruse to hypnotize the child using a device attached to an amusement park bear to try to convince her that her mother wasn't killed by a dragon at all, but by Wolverine himself. Despite Emiko's resistance to the conditioning, she eventually succumbs to their suggestion that she should get revenge against Logan for the death of her mother. On the other side of the bay, the noodle vendor takes Logan and his friends on a ferry to Akatora's island. He informs Logan that the island is set up as a movie studio. After gathering the necessary information, Logan leaves the noodle vendor no choice but to join in their fight and decides to storm the studio and face off against members of the Hand who are in monster movie costumes as they're shooting a scene that have real weapons built inside. As Logan slays them, he remarks that even though they are humans wearing monster costumes, they'd lost their humanity a long time ago. He orders Pale Flower and Yohei to recover Emiko and Yukio while he deals with the combatants. With no one left, Logan fights one-on-one with Akatora. During the fight, Akatora is boastful and overconfident and doesn't take into consideration Wolverine's healing factor. This makes the fight brief and one-sided, with Logan prevailing as he manages to slash Akatora's face. However, before he can slay the Hand leader, the others return with Yukio and Emiko. Before Logan can finish him off, Akatora tells Logan that one of his three allies is in reality a double agent and is working for the Hand. Logan turns around, throws the honor sword, impaling Yohei, and he dissolves. Yohei is revealed to be the spy in their midst, and while Pale Flower inquires as to how Logan knew, Logan says he'd initially thought Yohei was too skilled to be a Yakuza goon, and he also knew way too much. However, what really gave him away was the dagger he was holding that smelled like clove oil and blowfish toxin. Seizing the opportunity, Akatora manages to escape. As Akatora, Sumi, and Emi flee the scene, the boss man boasts about how he's not lost the battle as his conditioning of Emiko was a complete success. Back above the surface, Logan apologizes to Emiko and Yukio for not spending enough time with them and tells them that he has to leave soon to take care of something. He promises to return to Japan and asks them to be patient. Emiko says she understands and that she has a lot of training to do, with a sinister glint in her eye. Logan vs. Bear 110. In the Canadian wilderness, a bear is out looking for food. It enters a cave where it finds some jars. As the creature opens one of the pots, it releases a spirit of one of the great beasts and is possessed. Elsewhere, two criminals, Joko Kokomo and Peter Hale, rob a bodega while holding the owner at gunpoint. After getting away, Joko shoots the old store owner in cold blood. This elicits the RCMP to track down the two petty thieves as they left a bloody trail from the Northwest Territories to central Canada. Shaman, also known as Dr. Michael Two Youngman from Alpha Flight, is called in to help the RCMP with the search. He teams up with Wolverine and explains to him that the two criminals ditched their stolen car in the forest and that they're supposedly hiding in the park till the police are off their backs. When Wolverine asks why Shaman is so involved in this case, he tells Logan that he's been speaking to the Ravens who had warned him that one of the great beasts of antiquity had awakened in the area and would try to end the world. Wolverine thinks back to the time when he and Shaman could have been teammates in Alpha Flight, but Logan left before that could happen. While Logan never really bought into Michael's magic, he did see it work a few times. He asks Shaman whether he usually talks to ravens, to which he snarkily replies if he can talk to wolverines, why should ravens be left out? The crooks Jocko and Hale try to escape on foot. Meanwhile, the Totebind family is going on a camping trip. When they're instructed to turn around by an RCMP roadblock, Bob Tightbind's wife Catherine criticizes him so much about abiding by the rules that he decides to circle around and find another place nearby for them to camp. Wolverine tracks the scent of the two crooks and hopes to have them locked up by sundown. However, he's distracted by the great beasts that Shaman was talking about. Legend has it that the great beasts were supernatural beings that named the Earth a long time ago and serve as inspiration for werewolves and vampires. In reality, they're much worse, and if a predator like one of the great beasts is let out, things could get really nasty. The Totebind family have found a camping spot, and of course Mrs. Totebind has a few words to say. She complains about not being close enough to the campgrounds and how the washroom must be very far away. While Bob's trying to pitch a tent, he accidentally hurts his finger on the hammer and yowls in pain. His wife expresses her annoyance at his clumsiness and says her father never had trouble pitching a tent. Noticing this, their son Alan tells his mother to stop berating his father so much. The family are then confronted by Jocko and Hale, who hold them at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Shaman is trying to find out more about the great beast and how he didn't believe his grandfather's tales of them when he was younger. After investigating the broken parts, he realizes that the great beast has already been freed and that everyone in the area is in grave danger. Back at the campsite, Jocko and Hale are holding the Totebind family at gunpoint and demand they give them their keys, food, and money in return for their freedom. Bob tries to reason with them, saying he doesn't want any trouble. Catherine tells him to do something, as Jocko and Hale won't let them go easily. Wolverine comes to the family's rescue and is about to capture Jocko and Hale when the possessed bear appears behind Logan. Jocko, Peter, Catherine, along with Alan, make a beeline for the car. Bob decides to stay back and help Logan fight the creature. He tries hitting the monster with a stick, but is struck back. Shaman finds him and gets him away from the fight. While fighting the creature, Wolverine realizes that savagely attacking the animal is not the answer, and that after his mutation made him feral, he's been trying really hard to not lose his humanity. After remembering what Elektra, Stick, and Professor X taught him, he withdraws his claws and beats the demonic bear into submission with his bare hands. As soon as the bear hits the ground, Shaman quickly gets into position with the pot and chants some spells to trap the spirit back in the pot. The grizzly, freed of the evil spirit, is now normal and runs back into the forest. Jocko and Peter are now holding Alan and Catherine hostage after they crashed the jeep they escaped in. Alan flings his handheld video game and it strikes Jocko in the nose, making him drop his gun. Instructed by Jocko, Hale is about to shoot both Catherine and Alan when Logan threatens him with his claws. Jocko recovers his gun but is attacked from behind by Bob before he can use it. The RCMP arrives and takes the two criminals away. Logan and Shaman notice that the family they saved have many unresolved issues, as Bob and Catherine once again start arguing with each other, even after all that they've been through. Shaman asks Logan if they'll ever overcome their issues. Logan isn't sure and tells his old friend that he has the same struggle every day and walks off. Hothouse Flower, 111. Logan comes to Salem Center to check in with the X-Men at the Xavier Institute. He seems to walk through a wall, which is in reality a holographic projection, as repairs are taking longer than expected. A temporary fix for the wall that Juggernaut broke through. Logan is greeted by Jean, Scott, Hank, and Bishop, and gets a big hug from Jean, asking him how his trip to Japan was. The X-Men are busy setting up for a going-away party for Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. Sam and Aurora join the rest and are glad Logan is back. Logan checks in with Sam about his bike and whether it's been taken care of. He also goes to talk to Bobby Drake, who's taking a leave from the X-Men to help his father recover from getting beaten up for speaking up about mutant rights. The two men admit that time and circumstance have prevented them from being close friends, but Logan says that he respects Bobby and if he needs any help, he only has to ask. Jean informs Wolverine that a package arrived from Lando, Luckman, and Lake and expresses her doubts about the organization's interest in Logan. Wolverine opens it and finds a wooden box and a holographic recording of Zoe Culloden, who regrets that she couldn't deliver the box in person, but due to some problems at the office, she needs him to look after it. She warns him that something big and dark is coming, and that the timelines are converging around him. Logan is nonplussed and the X-Men are suspicious, but Logan decides to accept the task. Aurora asks Logan to join her and Bobby in the greenhouse, where she gives Bobby a mutant hybrid flower as a farewell present. Bobby says he's not going away forever, and that if he's ever needed by the X-Men, he'd come back running. Later, the team is going to Harry's hideaway, and Wolverine offers to drive Sam Guthrie on his Harley. Sam admits that he's been having trouble starting the motorbike the last few mornings and thought it was because of the cold. Wolverine admits that Sam did exactly what he asked, take the bike out for a ride every day to break in the engine, but points out that the smoke is a lot darker than it normally is, due to carbon buildup. Sam's been running the bike at a comfortable pace, and Harley-Davidsons are designed to go fast. The X-Men are at Harry's hideaway, a Westchester bar they love. However, the night out is getting to Logan. The bar was rebuilt from being wrecked recently, and and he regards it as somehow false now. He argues too much with the older X-Men, and he doesn't know the new members. He misses Kurt, Kitty, and Jubilee. Eventually, he leaves the bar and goes to another one, a grimy biker joint called the Auger Inn, whose jukebox is full of eccentric musicians. Drinking alone, Wolverine raises a toast to all the people who suffered from knowing him. At this point, the bartender says it's closing time, and Logan leaves. Later that night, Logan goes to sit in the abandoned office of Professor X and proceeds to unburden himself as though his friend were there. He talks about his growing feral nature and his sense of isolation. When Logan stops and asks what to do next, the dawn breaks through a nearby window. Logan smiles. Now he has his answer. The demons of the night fade away when morning comes, bringing in light and a new day. Donning his Wolverine costume, Logan goes to the danger room and starts up a basic workout routine with some battle bots. But the program goes wrong and spawns a hologram of a tall man in red armor with horns on his head, who informs him that a new age is dawning and he can be a part of it. Logan responds by stabbing the man in the faceplate, causing a part of it to flake off, revealing a skull underneath. With a wave, the man summons a woman in a shroud with a Japanese hairstyle, who Logan recognizes as Mariko Yoshida, his dead wife. The man assures Logan that the power he serves can bring her back to life, that an age of miracles is dawning, and all it will cost him is one insignificant thing. Logan pauses, then stabs him in the gut. The man cryptically admits that he's known Logan long enough to have foreseen this, but that he has time. Mariko wants Logan back, and eventually his guilt at what he's putting her through by separating them will cause him to relent. Logan turns to face Mariko, but before he can comfort her, Stick appears and gently lays her to rest in a nearby mound of earth, saying that she was dragged into the living world and that eternity is for sleeping and peace. He explains to Logan that the path he's going to choose is the right one, and that the man he just met wants to pull him off of it. He echoes Zoe Culloden's message, saying that something bad is coming, and that the path Logan has chosen will take him to strange lands and away from loved ones. But this is the path he needs to take to grow. Stick presses a button on a device similar to the one Zoe Culloden recorded her message on, causing himself and the whole scenario to promptly vanish. Sometime later, Logan takes Sam to buy a new bike. After he hands Sam the keys to the new vehicle, Sam asks Logan why he can't break in the new ride himself. Logan then reveals he's packed and ready to go as the guy who sold him the new bike throws him his bag. He instructs Sam to tell Jean he'll call as soon as he gets a phone, and also there's one thing he's decided to prove. It's that Storm was wrong. He's not a hothouse flower who can't survive on his own outside the school. Manhattan Misadventures 112. Arriving at the East Village in Lower Manhattan, Logan feels right at home and decides to involve himself in an altercation between a couple and a pair of street thugs. He makes short work of the goons and is dismissed by the man who's on a wheelchair, saying they didn't ask Logan to use violence and scare off the goons. The woman, however, thanks Logan and introduces herself as Kirsten and her partner Clive. Observing his bag, Kirsten asks Logan whether he's staying or leaving. After Logan implies the former, Kirsten explains that she's the superintendent of a building with a vacant apartment next to them, and that they both spend most of their days at the nearby Third Eye Cafe. Logan agrees to check out both the cafe and the vacant apartment. Nearby, a street mime is juggling clubs while riding a unicycle. As he cycles away from Logan, a chain snaps out of a nearby cellar, wrapping itself around a club in midair and snatching it away. The mime is so impressed that he breaks character, asking how that trick was performed. A voice from down the cellar replies that if the mime comes down, he'll learn. He complies, but when the mime climbs down, he immediately regrets this choice. The following day, as promised, Logan calls up Xavier Institute and the phone is answered by Jean, just the person he wanted to talk to. Jean checks up on him, asking whether he's staying and how he's doing. Logan informs her that something Iceman said before his departure really stuck with him, and that he wants to prove to himself he's still capable of walking among people without letting his feral side get the best of him. Jean assures him that he has nothing to prove and that he's already proven time and again he's trustworthy. She then checks up on whether he's still up for the rendezvous with the X-Men in Scotland. Logan confirms and also tells Jean he can be reached at the Third Eye Cafe. Jean also tells Logan he has people in the Institute who care about him, and Logan hangs up after letting Jean know he's never going to forget that fact. Logan ventures out for his first day, but it seems pretty dull as he's eating street food and has to listen to people call him creepy while walking down the street. When he wants to be alone, he goes home to his new address and is satisfied with the feel of hardwood stairs under his feet. At night, he can't get to sleep, consumed by the guilt of how his actions led to Charles Xavier turning into Onslaught, for which he's now being detained by the government. Logan tries to tire himself out by doing pull-ups, but his healing factor kicks in, rendering him awake and hungry. And as he opens the fridge, he finds 3 cans of beer and a few cheese slices. Looking out the window, He sees the mime rolling down the street, but now his face seems evil and he's juggling knives instead of Indian clubs. Shrugging this off, Logan goes to sleep. The next morning, Logan has breakfast in the third eye and asks Kirsten for a cup of coffee. Kirsten says he needs to find a job to occupy himself. Logan gets defensive and asks whether she's a social worker. Offended by Logan, Kirsten walks away and points out that she thought they were friends. Logan apologizes for his behavior and asks if she knows anyone in the area who's hiring. At Kirsten's suggestion, he goes to a building site to talk to the foreperson, Helen Bach, for work. Bach explains that she's not really offering a job but is working on a co-op. The collateral damage of the Onslaught crisis caused a housing shortage, and so the co-op is getting people to work on the site in exchange for a reduced price on an apartment. Logan admires their drive and asks if he can work on the site anyway for free. Bach puts it to a popular vote, and the workers cheer to let him work. Logan's assigned his first task, to work on cross braces, and instructs him to always wear a hard hat on the construction site. At the end of his first day, Logan and Bach are walking back. Bach admits she doesn't really believe Logan is running away from something. Logan answers he's not really running away, is trying to find something, and that looking within all this while has made him self-centered. Logan mentions he used to have a teacher who told him no man is an island. Bach mentions that Kirsten told her story of how they met and makes it clear to him that she doesn't support violence. As if on cue, the duo are confronted by the goons from the previous day who are totaling Logan's bike. Logan marches up to fight the thugs again, but Bach reasons with him to involve the authorities. As one of the goons tries to push her away, calling her a girlie, Bach hits him with a toolbox so hard he falls down. The other goon tries pulling a gun on them, but Logan attacks impulsively with his claws out. However, at the last moment, he retracts them before Bach sees them and knocks the goon out. As the goons come to their senses, they recall running into the mime juggling the Indian clubs. Bach notices Logan's knuckles are bleeding, but he lies, saying it's because of the punch he threw. Logan asks Bach where she learned how to fight, but she walks away, refusing to talk about it. Realizing he's not getting an answer, he decides to take his battered-up bike to his apartment, but there's a visitor. The mime he saw earlier is now in his sitting room, on his unicycle and juggling knives. The mime tells Logan that he's been waiting a long time for him, and Logan realizes he recognizes the voice. Maiming a mime. 113. Logan has come home to find a murderous mime juggling knives and taunting him. He also realizes the mime is juggling the box Zoe Culloden entrusted to him. He attacks, trying to retrieve the box, but the mime keeps taunting him about the way he attacks and how impulsive he is. Logan demands to know his identity, but the name slips his mind just before he could recognize it and is distracted by the falling box. Focusing solely on the cube, Logan suddenly remembers he saw the box in Shanghai a very long time ago when he was saving a young boy and his master from the Imperial Police. The student was a young Westerner boy, and they were running away to protect a seemingly ordinary wooden box from falling into the wrong hands. When the sergeant knocked the old man to the ground for disrespect, the boy struck him back. This caused the sergeant to turn his gun to the boy when Logan stepped in and decked the man. As the sergeant cocks his gun to shoot, a captain interceded and promptly killed the sergeant with a sword for disgracing the Imperial Japanese Army. The captain is then prepared to kill the boy, but Wolverine intervenes and tells him it's not honorable to kill a child and that the boy at least tried stopping the sergeant. When the captain sees that Logan is willing to fight to the death and is unarmed, he sheathed his weapon, saying that if he ever wanted, Logan would be welcome to study the martial arts at the Ogun Ryo Dojo in Japan, where he would work to fill the void within his body, mind, and soul. The old man, being helped up by his student, said that Logan would also be welcome to study under him, as Logan possesses powers he isn't aware of yet. Logan shrugged both these offers off, saying he had places to see and things to do, before he walked away, chugging whiskey and singing sea shanties. As he departed, the young man said they should go follow him, but the old man stops him, telling his young student that while the chaotic strength of Logan may be tempting to follow, there was still work they had to do to safeguard the wooden box. Back in the present, Logan reacts just in time before the mime stabs him. The mime somersaults in midair, having his wrist broken in the process. Downstairs, and a block away from Wolverine, Helen Bach is waiting to cross the road. She's already regretting her behavior the previous night and walking away from Logan. She remembers he was bleeding and wonders whether she should go back and comfort him. Bach hesitates for a moment, and in this moment, logic prevails and she acknowledges she just met Logan and doesn't know much about him. However, she does know he's honest, brave, and all alone. Even with a broken wrist, the mime isn't crying out in pain but simply switches hands and is ready to attack again. Logan smells two different scents on his attacker and quickly realizes that the mime has been possessed, which leaves him in a dilemma. He can't kill his real attacker without killing the mime, who's just an innocent civilian who got possessed. Down on the street below, Jean and Aurora were wondering whether they got Logan's address correct. Storm remarks Logan has always felt like an outsider wherever he went, and Jean says he shouldn't feel that way around Jean or Aurora, as she considers him a brother. They go up to the intercom to get into the apartment but realize the bell's broken. Jean feels that Logan shouldn't be left alone, and as they're entering, they see Helen as well and asks her whether she wants to enter too. Looking at her, they also ask whether she's okay, and Helen tells them she's fine and that she's not going inside and walks away. Back at the apartment, Logan doesn't defend himself but lets the mime slash through him. He tells the mime his mutant healing factor can cope with the damage and that he's simply tiring him out. Climbing up the stairs, Jean and Aurora remark on the grimness of the place, and Aurora comments that she'd lived in far worse conditions in Cairo. As they reach the landing, Jean senses the fight that's going on in the apartment and they storm through the door to help Logan. The poor mime doesn't stand a chance against Storm and Phoenix, who use their powers to knock him down. Logan informs them that the mime is possessed, and before Jean can conduct a telepathic probe to find out who the real attacker is, he leaves the mime's body and enters Jean's. It's revealed the attacker is the same entity that Logan encountered in the danger room the last time. The mime flees the scene with his broken wrist as Jean cries out in agony over the evilness that she's never experienced before. A possessed Jean tells Logan that the entity wants the box, Logan's head, and the souls of everyone he's ever loved. Storm tries to buy Jean some time to fight the evil power that's possessed her by restraining her body with wind. It doesn't work as Jean is made to throw a knife at Storm, but Logan jumps in the way, catching the knife in his gut. Storm tells him she could have deflected it with wind, but Logan says it was purely out of instinct that he dove to save Aurora. This act of selflessness is enough to stun the possessing spirit, and as it remembers the good person it used to be, Jean is able to force it out of her head. The entity leaves, and in the apartment, the X-Men are recouping. Logan tells his friends he's going to track down the entity and finish it once and for all, and entrust the box to them. On the street, Helen's supposedly possessed by the spirit. Helen barges down the street, knocking aside Kirsten and Clive, who realize that something's up. Meanwhile, in his mansion in Fire Lake, Massachusetts, Damon Hellstrom, the son of Satan, is using a large scrying emerald, which once belonged to the Ancient One, to watch for mystic threats. The emerald reflects the box, and Damon knows it brings mortal danger. Hell hath no fury. 114. Logan dons his superhero costume and is hunting down the spirit as a thunderstorm hits the city. He runs into Kirsten and Clive, who don't recognize him as he's in costume, and when interrogated, tell Logan that a friend of theirs knocked Clive out of his wheelchair without even turning back to hell. Hearing this, Logan realizes the spirit has possessed Helen, a local woman who gave him a job at a construction site. Clive tells Logan which way Helen went, and as he walks away, feels a familiarity in the voice of the stranger they just encountered. As he walks down a side alley, following her trail, Logan comes face to face with Damon Hellstrom, Satan's son, who reveals he's in town tracking the same evil entity. He asks Logan to safeguard the mysterious wooden box that he got from Zoe Culloden and tell Logan he can't get involved. As Hellstrom vanishes, Logan dismisses him, saying he was of no help at all, and whatever he said didn't make any sense at all to Logan. Lady Deathstrike, aka Yuriko Oyama, enters and tells Logan the wooden box is rightfully hers, as it belonged to her father. In Logan's apartment, Jean and Aurora are guarding the wooden box on Logan's say-so. Aurora expresses her apprehensions of leaving Logan to pursue the evil entity on his own, especially now when the public still fears mutants. Jean assures Aurora that Logan's regression into his feral nature has almost stopped and that he's actually more competent than before. Aurora points out that the evil spirit was able to possess Jean, one of the most powerful psi talents. As they're talking, there's a blackout as half of the Lower East Side is shrouded in darkness. The mysterious box, however, lights up, and the duo realize that the light is coming from inside the box. They decide to open it. Wolverine and Yuriko are now fighting on rooftops and fire escapes, and also break through into someone's living room. During their fight, she shows Logan the recent upgrade of a cybernetic skeleton by the mad cyborg Donald Pierce, a self-repair and reconfiguration program, or in other words, a cybernetic healing factor. Many blocks away, the possessed Helen Bark enters her apartment and searches for weapons to take down Logan and his mutant allies. The possessing spirit notes that its host Helen is far stronger than it assumed. As Helen opens a wardrobe, the spirit uncovers the secret she's been hiding. As they're fighting, Yuriko tells Logan her father invented the adamantium bonding process that was stolen by Canada's Department K that conducted the Weapon X program. She demands that Logan give her the box that's dear to her, as it's the only remaining legacy left by her father. Wolverine refuses and tells her he swore to protect the box, and there are bigger things at stake than her claim over the disputed box. As the fight escalates, Wolverine rips off the skin covering her metallic skull and pins her. He explains that he knows the box is hers, as it bears symbology similar to Yuriko's family's, and that she can have it after he calls Zoe Culloden, the woman who entrusted him with the box, and finds out more. Deathstrike pauses after this and decides to trust Logan. Back at the apartment, Jean and Aurora close the box, realizing the unfathomable power its owner would have. They're ambushed by the evil spirit who's possessed Helen. In her Air Force gear, The possessed Helen rains bullets at them from a submachine gun while telling them how betrayed it feels by Logan. Jean produces a telekinetic shield protecting them from the bullets and asks Ororo to deal with the shooter, who shoots a 10-force windstorm at Helen. The X-Men duo soon realize that Helen is possessed by the same spirit that took control of the juggler earlier on. They face the same dilemma Logan faced, how to get to the parasite without hurting the host. The spirit comments on how their compassion is a weakness, as Jean counters not just with words but uses her powers of astral projection to reveal the true nature and form of the evil spirit and asks him to let go of Helen. As the two fight it out in the astral plane, Jean not only overpowers the evil spirit that could only boast about being as strong as death itself, but also teaches him a lesson in how he should stop considering women lesser beings. Jean frees Helen of the entity as Wolverine enters the apartment with Deathstrike. He finds Helen recouping and goes to her. Helen recognizes Logan even in his costume, and the two tell each other about the past they've been hiding from. Helen tells Logan she was a pilot in the Air Force during the Gulf War, and her plane was shot down in Iraq. She was imprisoned and tortured by the Iraqi army, and when she was finally released, she was given a medal and a medical discharge on psychological grounds. She made herself a bunker in her apartment with her uniform, and collected various weapons to protect herself so as not to be at the mercy of others. After a few years, she was able to move on and decided to build things up instead of tearing them down. She decided to not live a life always armed and afraid. Wolverine sympathizes, remarking that's what everybody in the room wishes they could do as well. The evil spirit disagrees and says that while he was denied one worthy warrior host, another was brought right to him with electric fire in her veins, cold metal in her heart, and a deep hatred in her soul. He takes control of Lady Deathstrike and uses her cybernetic healing factor to reshape her face to resemble someone Logan can identify, and asks him whether he recalls who the face belonged to. After this, Lady Deathstrike, now possessed, runs away, breaking through a window. As Logan, Storm, Phoenix, and Helen look on in horror, Storm asks Logan who the spirit is that just won't leave him alone. Logan explains it was Ogun, his teacher, who taught him that a warrior's soul and honor are his strength and showed him by example that even the most noble man could be corrupted. Executing the X-Men. 115. At the secluded Hulkbuster bunker base in New Mexico, the purpose of which was to earlier control the damage caused by the Hulk, Bastion has planned something evil. He successfully captured the mutant Storm, Cyclops, and Cannonball after breaching the Salem Center, and is set to successfully execute Operation Zero Tolerance to bring an end to mutant kind. He owes this success to Jubilee, who's kept prisoner and whose memories he accesses. She helplessly looks on as Bastion is unloading the gurneys occupied by her now neutralized friends. At first, she believes Bastion is bluffing and everything she's seeing is just a hologram. Cannonball gains consciousness and threatens to take them on as soon as the neutralization cuffs come off. He's knocked down by Bastion's henchmen as Jubilee tells him to back off. After she sees Logan and Jean's bodies, especially their hands touching, reality dawns on her finally. Bastion reveals that along with the capture of the X-Men, he's also in the process of decoding the Xavier protocols and the mutant underground files that contain information on how to kill the X-Men. The supervillain tells Jubilee that he isn't pleased or elated to wipe out the mutants, but simply wants to protect the human race. As Bastion's men are taking the mutants down to the containment block, they notice Wolverine is bleeding, and as they turn him over and pry his hands from Jean's, they comment on how badly he's injured. Before they're taken away, however, Bastion wants to have one last look at them. He contemplates why he hates mutants, as he remarks they're not very different from humans. How very similar to humans they look, how they bruise and bleed just like humans do, and how they seek solace from their friends and loved ones in troubled times. Brushing away these thoughts, he walks away and orders his men to take the neutralized mutants away. Bastion goes to meet Xavier, who's turned himself in to the US government after the Onslaught debacle, and taunts him about his failure in realizing his dream of peace between humans and mutants. Looks like the professor still has it in him when he retorts with, "Men die, Bastion. Dreams live on." Down at the containment block, Bastion's men are sorting out the mutants to their assigned special cell. They presume Logan is dead, as he's taken a lot of damage due to their aircraft crashing, and decide to incinerate him after taking off the power dampener they've put on him. Bastion shows Xavier how his best and brightest have failed in their mission, and how they'd spend the rest of their lives confined in this facility, to which ProfessorX retorts that they haven't failed as long as they have life left in them. Bastion tells Xavier that Wolverine is the perfect example of what makes humans afraid of mutants, and points out that the professor shares their fears of Wolverine not being able to control his bestial side. Bastion also informs Xavier that Logan is dead. Cut to the incineration chamber where Bastion's men are preparing to get rid of Logan's body. Just as they're about to turn the ignition on, Logan gains consciousness as he smells gas and attacks the two soldiers. Bastion Bastion is called down by Daria, who's scanning Jubilee's memories. She informs Bastion that Jubilee went into depression after Bastion left, and pulls up the images showing Jubilee's memories of Wolverine violently clawing his way through hordes of attackers. Bastion tells her there's nothing to worry about, as the elemental force of destruction that is Wolverine has by now been reduced to a pile of ashes. Wolverine infiltrates the containment block where the soldiers are roughhousing Cannonball. Disguised as a soldier, he takes out the security cameras before ordering the others to lower their weapons, release the mutants from their cells, and help Cannonball back up on his feet. Bastion's memory scan is interrupted by a soldier who informs him that they've lost visual on the containment block and that all the cell doors have been opened. The soldier pulls up the feed from the hidden cameras and shows Bastion that the guards have been compromised. The X-Men are now free inside the base. Bastion goes down to check it out and discarded by a rule-abiding trooper who asks his master for identification. As they're ordered into position by their leader, Bastion informs them that the mutants have escaped and now have secured body armor and weapons. They're now disguised as troopers. He also orders them to shoot any trooper that has their weapon set to stun and can't provide the new password. Bastion and his henchmen get on the lift to go up to the surface. As the trigger-happy soldiers shoot their own men, Bastion realizes that it was Jean who took his form and gave the soldiers false orders. Jubilee sarcastically comments that Bastion's next order should be to shoot anybody that looks like him. The now escaped X-Men are well aware of the fight up ahead, and Scott and Cannonball decide to blast through the remaining guards. Meanwhile, Bastion has sealed the facility and locked the exit door. He's informed of the current location of the mutants and proceeds to send the newer and deadlier Sentinels after them. Storm and Cyclops use their powers to try and open the door, but fail. The mutants decide to fight the Sentinels as Bastion and Daria look on. Just as all seems to be lost, Jubilee flips the switch to open the exit door as the X-Men proceed to cut off pursuit. As Bastion prepares to return to the Xavier Institute, Wolverine wonders who helped them as the X-Men fly away in an escape pod to plot the next course of action. X-Men Deserted, 116. The escaped mutants seek refuge from a blind man named Mustang in the desert. Mustang informs them of the Prospero Clinic down the highway and how he was a long-term project. Along with some other patients of Dr. Prospero, he was staying at the trailer park till everything was repaired. Storm makes short work of the footprints they left, and Mustang realizes his guests are mutants. He informs them he won't turn them in and reveals his past as a fighter pilot in the US Air Force. After he retired, he bought an old fighter plane and became a stunt pilot. One fateful day during a show in Iowa, the plane's engine blew up and the stick malfunctioned. Mustang decided to redirect the plane away from the kids in the stand instead of ejecting himself out. Later that night, Logan goes to investigate the clinic, and the next morning, the X-Men confront Mustang. Jean uses her powers to plant Logan's memory in Mustang's mind, and he's able to see the clinic in his mind. Mustang witnesses a coyote being zapped by the clinic's laser fence and hears an incoming 18-wheeler truck. In the memory that is actually Wolverine's, he's running toward it and leaps up on it effortlessly. Popping his claws painfully, he peels open the truck's roof to reveal the shipment inside. The source of the Doctor's miraculous cures were actually cybernetic components for the Prime Sentinels. Dr. Prospero was actually retrofitting his wounded patients with cybernetic parts and turning them into sleeper agents for Operation Zero Tolerance. The X-Men finally realized that the new Sentinels are cyborgs who were activated by an electric signal. Mustang rues his fate as Wolverine says brainwashing is no price to pay for losing one's humanity. Mustang tells the X-Men he can hide them as aircrafts, and Sentinels approach. He leads them into an underground bunker and asks them to stay put until he gives the all clear. As the aircrafts fly over them, Bastion wants to check out the encampment. He's informed of the real nature of the encampments, but remains unconvinced. Sam looks out at the aircraft passing them by, but informs his fellow mutants of the bus containing the other patients of Dr. Prospero. Mustang tries to tell them the truth about the treatments they're getting, but the patients don't believe him. He points to the hiding mutants as Bastion orders the activation of the 3 sleeper units, even though they weren't fully equipped. Elsewhere, Senator Kelly is at his wife's grave contemplating his actions of dealing with the mutants. He decides to shut down Operation Zero Tolerance with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D. Wolverine saves the day, 117. At the encampment, the X-Men were hiding in a bunker to avoid capture by Bastion. Mustang opens the trapdoor to reveal the mutants who would corroborate his story of how Prospero's patients are being turned into sleeper agents for Operation Zero Tolerance. This act of his unknowingly led 3 Prime Sentinels in the encampment to attack the X-Men, who successfully defeat them. The horrified patients finally believe the truth about what's been done to them. The X-Men decide to raid and shut down Prospero's facility before he turns more innocent people into mindless killing machines by retrofitting them with cybernetic parts. Back in the aeroplane, Bastion orders Dr. Prospero to activate more Prime Sentinels, as S.H.I.E.L.D. is on the verge of putting the operation down. Meanwhile, as night falls in the desert, Jubilee has escaped from Bastion's underground prison with Daria's help. She's exhausted and doesn't think she can go on much further, but remembers how Logan wouldn't give up. Simultaneously, at Prospero's clinic, while the X-Men are strategizing their attack, Logan sniffs a familiar scent coming from the desert and leaves without a word. The X-Men are shocked at Logan's sudden disappearance and wonder where he ran off to. In the desert, Jubilee is fighting a Sentinel who's tracked her down and now has orders to terminate her. After dealing some damage to the Sentinel, Jubilee tries to run away but trips over a prairie dog burrow in the dark. She gets back up, and before she can attack the Sentinel, Wolverine intervenes and kills the Sentinel. Jubilee, reunited with Wolverine, hugs him and starts to cry. Later, at the clinic, the bus carrying Prospero's patients crashed into the facility. Logan returns with Jubilee on his back as the X-Men wonder why he left so suddenly. Noticing the bus, Logan realizes he's late as Jubilee hugs the other X-Men. Scott, Sam, and Logan go inside to check out the facility, but find that it's already been trashed and there's nobody inside. They decide to search the place for any clues that had given more information about the transformation procedure. Outside, Mustang wants to commit arson and get rid of the hospital. Scott tries to calm him down, explaining that they first need to get all the patients the necessary medical attention required to reverse the Sentinel transformation process. Mustang protests as Wolverine makes him understand that the choice to retain his humanity lies only with him and no one else. A few miles away, on board an aircraft flying over New Mexico, Bastion realizes the X-Men have breached the facility that they were using to create Prime Sentinels, and in a last-ditch attempt, orders the remote activation of a special sleeper agent with the Hunter-Killer units. This results in Mustang, the blind man who's been helping the mutants all this while, being transformed into a Sentinel with cybernetic eyes. Fighting friends. 118. Mustang, a retired fighter pilot who was severely injured and lost his vision in a plane crash, was receiving treatment at Dr. Prospero's clinic. After the X-Men showed him the truth about the clinic turning injured patients into unwilling killing machines to take out the mutants, he joins them in their mission to end the barbaric transformation process. However, what he and his mutant friends don't know is that he's a special Sentinel with upgraded armor and weaponry, who's now been remotely activated by Bastion. Equipped with cybernetic eyes, Mustang's only mission now is to kill his mutant friends. Logan intervenes before Scott uses his optic blast on Sentinel Mustang and goes up to him, believing he hasn't been completely transformed. He urges Mustang to fight the program Bastion has implanted in him, but is attacked by Mustang shooting lasers out of his eye holes. Wolverine dodges the attack as Cyclops and Cannonball band together to take Mustang down. Logan asks his friends to leave him alone with Mustang and get the other civilians out of harm's way. He runs up to attack Mustang and knocks him over with a glass door. Outside, the other X-Men have managed to get all the wounded patients out of harm's way. Hearing Wolverine is fighting a Prime Sentinel alone, Jubilee runs inside to help him. Storm notices hordes of Prime Sentinels flying in their direction as the outnumbered X-Men prepare for the fight of their lives. Back inside, Wolverine tries to reason with Mustang again as he narrates his life story of finding his way back to humanity even after being turned into a feral beast. Mustang attacks him with a laser blast again, and echoes Bastion's notion of mutants being a threat to the survival of humans. Jubilee intervenes and blasts Mustang's eye with her powers, rendering him blind again. He falls to the ground, regretful about his actions. Back outside, as the X-Men prepare to take on the Prime Sentinels, they realize they aren't actually attacking, but retreating, as S.H.I.E.L.D. air fighters are shooting at them, forcing even the human pilots in the port ships to leave. The X-Men look on as Operation Zero Tolerance seems to come to an end. Bastion takes matters into his own hands and hurtles towards the X-Men, targeting Scott in particular, who tries to talk to him. He attacks and incapacitates Scott with a laser, while Jean and Storm work together to free him from the Sentinel technology. Cannonball flies up and catches an unconscious free-falling Bastion. The X-Men are then joined by Agent G.W. Bridge, who's with S.H.I.E.L.D. He orders a medic to tend to Scott and goes on his way to take care of the remaining Prime Sentinels. The medics find out that a mini nanotech device was implanted inside Scott. Wolverine, Jubilee, and Mustang join the others outside as Wolverine, clutching a stack of floppy disks, asks what happened to Scott. The X-Men decide to take Scott back to Salem Center on an aircraft that just happened to be there. Jean creates a psy-cocoon to stabilize Scott as the X-Men prepare to leave. Before Logan leaves, he hands over the discs to Mustang to pass it on to S.H.I.E.L.D., informing him that they contain the medical records of the people who were converted into Sentinels. As Logan and Mustang part ways, Logan tells him to stay with S.H.I.E.L.D. as they could help reverse the transformation. Mid-air, Scott regains consciousness and informs his teammates that the device that's inside him is actually a bomb. The best there is at what he does. The X-Men accidentally teleport to a Skrull training ground and are rendered unconscious by the shape-shifting aliens. They abduct Wolverine, replacing him with a Skrull who went a long way to keep up the illusion. The Skrull also sowed the seeds of doubt in the X-Men about their leader, Professor Charles Xavier, leading to the eventual disbandment of the superhero group. His deception was soon uncovered by the real Wolverine, much to the horror of the X-Men, who didn't realize they had a Skrull in their midst. The X-Men reflect on losing Logan and wonder what happened to Wolverine, making him Death, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. He's ordered by his master to kill the Hulk and thinks back to the day he was captured. The Skrulls took him to their master, who Wolverine identifies due to his heightened sense of smell. In the present, Logan has tracked down Hulk in a forest and attacks him. As the fight rages on, Logan's past and his transformation into Death comes to light. He's held captive by Ensabar Nur, aka Apocalypse, who now has the Skrulls working for him and offers to lead him to his destiny. He's confronted by Sabretooth, who now has adamantium and a healing factor of his own, and extremely sharp metal claws. Back in the present, Hulk and Logan are still fighting, both dealing equal amounts of damage to the other. Back to the past, where Wolverine is fighting Sabretooth, after a savage and brutal fight, Logan kills Creed by piercing his stomach with his bone claws. He justifies this primal act in his mind, stating that unlike himself, the bloodthirsty Creed would not even fight being brainwashed into mercilessly killing. After this, Apocalypse proceeds to extract the adamantium from Sabretooth's skeleton and bond it to Wolverine's. The fight between Hulk and Logan doesn't seem to be letting up, as the duo keep hitting each other, each blow more brutal than the last. The Hulk keeps smashing Logan into the ground, turning the non-adamantium parts of him into jelly, while the clawed mutant decides to use Hulk's own momentum against him and pops his claws in a last-ditch attempt. The green monster falls back with a stabbed throat, and just as Wolverine is about to finish him, he hesitates. Hulk gets up and leaves, as Logan is transported to meet Apocalypse in his present form, who vows to kill Logan as well as run the world red with blood as he ushers in the Age of the Apocalypse. Marvelous verdict. In this video, we got an idea of what Logan would be like if his natural mutant progression was allowed to continue, if not hindered by the introduction of adamantium into his bones. It's no secret that Logan's battle with his own feral nature has been an ongoing one since the Weapon X project tried to turn him into a killing machine for the US government. Larry Hama provided a unique philosophical conundrum not only with regard to the clawed mutant, but also apprehensions made crystal clear by his fellow X-Men, some of whom were scared of Logan's growing feral nature after Magneto forced the adamantium out of his body. Anyway, things turned out alright at the end, with Logan regaining control of his feral side after he's reinforced with the adamantium. Even though this storyline has been since forgotten, even by Marvel, it does provide an insight into the mind of the brooding lone wolf Wolverine. With the upcoming release of Deadpool and Wolverine, we hope to see more of Logan's feral side as Hugh Jackman dons the iconic yellow and blue comic book costume on screen for the first time.